You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 632. Chapter 632, Chapter 166, Trouble is Coming, thanks to the buy-in reward from the Flying Clan's Big Shot Beiji, 4. Lu Hong couldn't say anything else. He nodded and said, I understand. Principal, then shall we strictly prevent Wuxia from making it into the top 100 again? And, the previous mission has been cancelled. Students from the Single Divine Language Department are not allowed to make it into the top 100. If you can't do it, all of the quota and benefits for next year will be cancelled. I won't give you any benefits. If you can't do it, there will only be punishment. I spent so many resources to nurture you, but it's useless. What's the point of nurturing you? Lu Hong said carefully, Dean, then I'll hand in the extra 2,000 merit points later. As he said that, he said with a perturbed expression, Can you explain it to the other cabinet elders for me? I really didn't take that much. I really did trade it for 80,000 merit points. Su Yu just wants to get me killed. I'm not that stupid. Zhou Mingren waved his hand. He was not angry, but he looked mighty. Would he believe whatever Su Yu said? Lu Hong said confidently that he spent 80,000 merit points. He would just have to ask Zhou Pingsheng. Of course, Zhou Pingsheng. This student of his, Zhou Mingren, had a headache. His appetite was really big. He opened his mouth and asked for 100,000 merit points. If the other elders were to pursue this matter, it would be really troublesome, especially now, when they were preparing to push him up to the position of curator. As for Lu Hong's 2,000 points, it wasn't a big deal to Shanghai. Lu Hong's quota in the Single Divine Language Department was a little lower than the others, so it was fine if he took it. Troublesome matters came one after another. 100,000 merit points deficit, Lu Wenyan returned, the other students asked for the article of will, and Zheng Yiming was seriously injured. At this moment, Zhou Mingren felt like he was in a terrible situation. Initially, he wanted to go into seclusion and try to break through to the sun and moon. Now that he was in such a mess, how was he supposed to go into seclusion? Where would he find the time to go into seclusion? He knocked on the table. Zhou Mingren said, Bai Feng and Su Yu, keep an eye on them. Your two students are quite talented. Their elders are also researchers in our department. Don't be so stingy and spend more effort on nurturing them. Lu Hong's face was filled with embarrassment and helplessness. He said softly, Dean, I really can't afford to nurture them. That younger brother of mine has already spent a lot of my resources. I also want to enter Ling Yun as soon as possible. As for the two of them, I really don't have much time to take care of them. Both of you. Zhou Mingren had a headache. If his own department's researchers couldn't even afford to nurture their own students, then what was the point of becoming a teacher? Under such circumstances, would these students still have any sense of identity towards the Single Divine Prose department? Could it be that they had really deducted too much from Lu Hong all these years? Lu Hong's student, Yang Sha, was not bad. He had a chance of entering the top 100 and advancing into the sky. That new student, Lin Yao, was also not bad. Moreover, Lin Yao's grandfather was also in the Lingyun realm of the Single Divine Prose department. He was truly one of their own. Your two students will have a 30 merit point quota every month in the future. Don't even think about your own students. I won't. Lu Hong was pleasantly surprised. 30 merit points was a lot. A researcher in the Soaring Cloud realm could only get so much. One had to know that Chen Yong only had a 50 merit point quota every month. That was even when he was the curator, who was at the 9th level of the Soaring Cloud realm. Of course, Chen Yong only gave him the basic quota and didn't give him anything else. Otherwise, the 9th level of the Lingyun realm wouldn't be so miserable. Zhou Mingren exhaled lightly, becoming more and more impatient. There were a lot of troublesome matters. After he became the peak of the mountain and sea realm, he actually rarely bothered about these matters. Previously, Zheng Yiming was the one handling them, and he was the branch master. Now that these troublesome matters had fallen on his head, he didn't know who should take over as the branch master for the time being. Right, how has Xia Chan's performance been recently? Very good. Zhou Mingren thought for a moment and said, Xia Chan, let her make some preparations. Let her enter the Sea of Consciousness secret realm next month. Dean, this. Xia Chan's faction isn't in cahoots with Xia Yuan and the others. Could Xia Yuan? No worries. Zhou Mingren waved his hand and said indifferently, it's just a two-line investment. They are all members of the Xia family. It doesn't matter which faction loses. Even if Xia Yuan wins, he won't dare to do anything to them. Do they really think that the Emperor of Great Xia and the Master of Xia Mansion can't do without him? Even if Xia Chan's faction failed, it wouldn't be a big deal. At most, she would lose her position as the Mansion Master and nothing else. Zhou Mingren understood this point. No matter how strong Xia Yuan was, even if he was invincible, would he dare to kill Xia Chan? Her grandfather was Marquis Xia, and her grandfather was the Emperor of Great Xia. He was a direct descendant and didn't want to live anymore. Lu Hong nodded. Very quickly, he said, all right, I'll inform him when I get back. Oh right, is senior brother Wenxing going in this time? He's just one step away from Ling Yun. Now that he's in, I feel that Ling Yun is safe. I have to congratulate senior brother Wenxing in advance. At the mention of Hu Wenxing, Zhou Mingren couldn't help but think of Bai Feng, who had defeated him with a single strike. He became even more frustrated and had a headache. He felt that everything wasn't going well. We'll see. He hasn't come out of closed-door cultivation yet. At this point, he added, I have to go out in a few days. If there's anything, if the other pavilion elders aren't around, you can go look for Principal Xia. Got it. Lu Hong hurriedly nodded. He was doubtful. Go out. Go where? Zheng Yiming had not been sent to the heavenly battlefield recently. Instead, he was recuperating. At this moment, Zhou Mingren should not be able to leave and should be helping him recuperate. Go out now. Also, the few elders did not seem to be around today. Where did they go? He had a nagging feeling that Zhou Mingren was a little anxious and uneasy today. Zheng Yiming's injuries were not light. If he were to leave, could he bring Zheng Yiming along with him? One by one, the clues were linked together. However, there was still a major thing missing. Lu Hong could not guess the specific situation. He only felt that Zhou Mingren seemed to have lost his bearings. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 633. Chapter 633, Chapter 166, Trouble is Coming, thanks to Baiyin for the tip from the Flying Family's Beiji boss, 5. Dean, if you go out, then if someone else comes. This person was talking about the students who had won the essay of will. Those who could be found were not simple people. You go out and stall for some time. Lu Hong was very helpless, but he quickly said, okay, I got it. He was just floating in the air. Why did it feel like Zhou Mingren was using him as a branch master? Was he really going to make me the branch master? I can't take it either. Ling Yun wasn't even a branch master, and Ling Yun wasn't lacking in the divine literature department. Furthermore, he wasn't even a direct descendant of Zhou Mingren. Seeing that Zhou Mingren didn't give any further instructions, Lu Hong didn't stay any longer and left cautiously. He heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, there wasn't much trouble. The main problem was that Zhou Pingsheng was the scapegoat. That old fellow was quite greedy, and he happened to be Zhou Mingren's student. Under the circumstances where Zheng Yiming was injured, he was Zhou Mingren's face, and he was prepared to push him to become the head of the school. At this moment, it wasn't appropriate to scold him too much. Otherwise, it would be Zhou Mingren who would lose face. Lu Hong sneered in his heart. He knew it would be like this. Zhou Pingxing was at the front, and if there was trouble, it would be Zhou Pingxing who would be in more trouble. Now, Zhou Mingren could only turn a big issue into a small one. As he walked out, he was thinking about other things. Zheng Yuming was crippled, Hu Wensheng was in closed-door cultivation, Zhou Pingxing was in charge of the blood essence research, and Zhou Mingren's direct disciple was trapped. It seemed like the position of branch master might fall to a few 9th-level Lingyun cultivators. Lu He's younger brother's teacher was a 9th-level Lingyun cultivator. There was still hope. It's a pity that I'm not at the 9th level of Lingyun. Otherwise, I might even be able to fight for it. There's no one left to use. Now I remember my 2 students. Shaking his head slightly, Lu Hong sighed in his heart. The Divine Literature department was very strong, and there were many people. However, after all these years of fighting, the hearts of the people had scattered. The few elders were still fighting openly and secretly. Zhou Mingren was actually worried about the disciples of those elders. On the other hand, it seemed like an outsider like him had a chance to gain Zhou Mingren's attention this time. Back then, the teacher that Lu He had acknowledged as his teacher was also an independent sect within the single divine prose sect. With Ling Yun's 9th level strength, he was not a direct disciple of the other elders. This time, the hope of becoming a branch master was even greater. As he thought about this, he thought of Su Yu. He wanted to laugh. Zhou Mingren had encountered such a big problem, and he had to start from Su Yu. If it wasn't for Su Yu and Zheng Yuming, no one would have had the chance. That trash by phone didn't manage to do anything for so many years, but Su Yu, it's only fun if he really enters the sky. Sea of Consciousness Secret Realm. I must let this kid enter. I have to inform that side and let him enter the sky as soon as possible. That would be fun. He had to inform Su Yu. As for whether he could enter or not, that would depend on his own ability. He didn't have to lose anything anyway. Xia Yuan is coming back. He thought of this guy again, the guy who had always been suppressing everyone. This was a problem, but fortunately, it wasn't just a branch of divine literature. At the moment, they were just cooperating. At the same time, in the Great Xia Mansion's territory, in the strongholds of the 10,000 races, experts received a message. Su Yu, a student of the Great Xia Civilization Academy, at the 9th stage of Qianjun Realm, middle stage of recuperation, 10,000 stone combat strength, defeated a student ranked 38th on the Great Xia Civilization Academy's top 100 list. Mission, kill Su Yu. Reward, 500 contribution points. 500 contribution points. This was the reward for killing a cultivator at the later stage of the Soaring Heavens realm. In an instant, the experts from the myriad clans within the Great Xia Mansion were astonished. It was so high. That's right. The students who were recuperating had yet to leave the academy. Entering the academy to kill. No one would go to the academy for such a small amount of merit points. It was more like courting death. However, even if there was a difficulty, could it be that Su Yu had yet to come out? 500 contribution points was not a small amount. The mission was only given to those in the air and above. Many Sky Realm experts were tempted. 500 contribution points was not a small amount. What did this Su Yu do to make his superiors issue a killing order to a student? Not only that, there was a supplementary clause at the end. It would be even better if they could capture him alive. However, capturing him alive was very troublesome. Killing him was easy, but escaping with his people was not easy, even if the contribution points were higher. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 634. Chapter 634, Chapter 167 Grandmaster on the Road 1. The Great Xia mansion was in turmoil. And at this moment, Suyu was just a small wave in the sea. A small wave could kill him. Suyu did not care about the outside world. Cultivation was the foundation. As for schemes, they were all for the sake of serving the strong. If you were not strong, no matter how good your schemes were, you would only be a so-so. You would be killed with a single slap. The basic incantation was his next main task. Although the 5 elements essence blood that he had asked Xia Huyo to buy wasn't in place yet, Xia Huyo had still traded 60 drops of essence blood for him. It was enough for now. In the fragment room, Suyu had returned to his initial attitude when he had just entered the academy. He worked hard to cultivate, but his progress was too slow. He couldn't even beat the top 30 of the top 100. He felt that it wasn't right. As for the fact that he had only entered the academy for 2 months, that wasn't important. The important thing was, didn't you see that I even provoked the peak of the mountain in Sea Realm? In his Sea of Will, his blood essence was digested. 36 temporary God apertures were opened. These apertures were opened, quickly forming a complete system. It was like breathing, swallowing and spitting out the scattered willpower in the fragment room. It's a bit impure. Suyu suddenly had a feeling. This kind of scattered willpower was not pure enough, and it was very difficult to absorb. Even after opening 36 apertures, the speed was not fast enough. But it's not bad. Suyu was not picky. He did not strengthen his willpower. Instead, he used the willpower he had absorbed to polish his divine aperture. Starting from the first divine aperture, he started to polish it bit by bit. Opening the God aperture. After opening 36 God apertures, he could take the initiative to cultivate willpower. The speed was very slow. The God aperture was harder to open than the body aperture. Suyu had cultivated many times a few days ago, but he had not succeeded in opening it. At this moment, Suyu used the power of blood essence to absorb willpower bit by bit and polish the aperture. Gradually, the first God aperture showed signs of opening. Originally, because it was opened temporarily, the God's aperture was a little dim. At this moment, it gradually lit up. A drop of blood essence was exhausted. Suyu did not delay and quickly swallowed the second drop. By the time the second drop was exhausted, the God's aperture had already been polished to a dazzling light. In the next moment, the Sea of Will trembled slightly, and with a rumble. Suyu's soul seemed to have left his body. At this moment, he seemed to have seen an even wider world. His soul, or rather, his willpower, was drifting about. The divine aperture had been opened. The first divine aperture had been officially opened. Suyu saw his physical body and felt as if his soul had left his body. Soul left his body. Suyu thought of something. That's right. After the divine aperture was opened, wasn't it just opening the soul? Willpower could also be understood as the soul. The manifestation of willpower. The awakening of willpower. At this moment, Suyu seemed to have understood something. Why could the consciousness only be awakened after the manifestation? Because only when the consciousness was manifested could a cultivator discover the true existence of their willpower, and only then could they know where the acupoint was. Was that so? Without the experience of opening a formula, how could they know where the acupoint of the sea of consciousness was? He couldn't even see it. Therefore, even if I deduced the formula and gave it to others to cultivate, it would still be difficult to open it without the experience of others. It would require a lot of time and energy. Suyu thought to himself. In the next moment, his soul returned to the aperture. When he opened his eyes, he felt that everything was different. Previously, he couldn't see willpower. It was similar to air. You knew its existence, but you couldn't see it. But at this moment, he could vaguely see something. The surrounding space was filled with something like fog. It was willpower. It was like a thin fog. Willpower could feel it. At this moment, he could also see a little bit. This was an ability that only those in the Sky Realm could have. No wonder only those in the Sky Realm could see how much willpower others had accumulated. That was because they could really see it. Su Yu was delighted. The mist was surging towards him at this moment, but it felt very dirty and messy. Isn't there any pure willpower? At this moment, Su Yu suddenly thought of a place. Bai Feng's small research room. It was filled with purified willpower. Wasn't the willpower inside different? Thinking of this, Su Yu suddenly stood up and went to take a look. He wanted to see if there was any difference in the purified willpower. On the third underground floor, Bai Feng began to try the combination of divine runes from other races again. He was focused and did not have the mood to care about anything else. Outsiders could not enter this laboratory. Those who could enter were either his own people or extremely powerful enemies who could kill him with a single slap. Therefore, he did not need to be on guard. If the enemy really came, he would be killed with a single slap. Bai Feng vaguely felt that someone had entered. It should be Su Yu. He could not be bothered to care. He was busy studying his own things. And at that moment, what was Su Yu doing? He was drooling. Milky white. Yes, in his eyes, at that moment, the interior of the laboratory was filled with milky white fog. It felt very delicious. It was very pure. It was the same as his own Yuan Qi. If the willpower in the fragment room was the Yuan Qi before he purified it, then what was here was the Yuan Qi after he purified it. The purity could not be compared. At that moment, the only divine aperture that had been opened slowly took the initiative to absorb the milky white fog. Su Yu's entire body shivered. Comfortable. He even wanted to shout out. Damn, the difference was too great. On top, he was sucking so hard that it was somewhat disgusting. But here, it was really too good to suck. A divine aperture did not absorb much. Su Yu looked guiltily at Bai Feng over there. Teacher did not notice, right? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 635. Chapter 635, Chapter 167. Grandmaster is on his way too. I just want to taste it. I want to experience the difference between pure willpower and messy willpower. Now, it seems that the difference is really, really big. Bai Feng really didn't pay attention to this. Su Yu couldn't absorb it, so why would he pay attention to this? However, he also felt that Su Yu hadn't left. He thought that Su Yu was watching his research, so he was gratified. This kid really knew how to care about his teacher's research results. After a while, Bai Feng was almost done. He turned his head to look at Su Yu. He saw that Su Yu was in a daze with a smile on his face. What are you doing? Bai Feng shouted and Su Yu woke up. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was absorbing and digesting that bit of pure willpower just now and did not absorb it anymore. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if his teacher found out. Su Yu didn't dare to say that he would come down to taste it. He smiled foolishly and said, "Teacher, I feel like staying here all the time. Willpower seems to be very comfortable. Will I be able to cultivate faster here?" "Stop it." Bai Feng said unhappily, "Of course it's comfortable. It will definitely be faster if I'm faster, but I'm not allowed to cultivate here. If you cultivate willpower here and observe the text of willpower, the willpower in the text of willpower will overflow and cause the willpower in this place to be no longer pure. It's not good for preserving the divine text." "Got it." Su Yu hurriedly nodded, and then asked curiously, "Teacher, then where can you get such willpower?" Bai Feng looked at him strangely and said, "You can't take the initiative to absorb it now, so why do you care so much? If you can't take the initiative to absorb it, it's the same no matter where you are. It's enough to have willpower to resist it. No, teacher, I'm just curious. Let me ask, don't always say that I don't need to know. That's right. Bai Feng nodded. As a teacher, he had to impart knowledge to resolve doubts. This isn't available anywhere. It needs to be purified. Of course, the purity of willpower varies from place to place. For example, our fragment chamber is slightly purer than the Library of Heaven's Path. On the other hand, the Library of Heaven's Path is slightly better than the trash in the Library of Heaven's Path. Bai Feng explained, if the purity is measured in percentage, our fragment room is 50% purer, the library is 40%, and the library is 30%, and this laboratory is 100%. Of course, the Academy also has a Sea of Consciousness secret realm, and the purity of willpower in there isn't low either. It's about 80%, which is considered very good. Sea of Consciousness secret realm? Yes. Bai Feng said casually, it can be considered a relatively high-end secret realm. It was left behind by the first-generation head prefect. The first generation also had many divine literature departments. The Sea of Consciousness secret realm was somewhat special. It wasn't formed by a single divine literature, but was formed by several divine literature. It can even be said that it's actually the Sea of Consciousness of the first generation. However, there are many divine literature. It's also troublesome to open it, and it consumes a lot of things. Suyu nodded and said with some anticipation, can we go in? Sure. Bai Feng said casually, as long as you have money, opening it once is about, let me calculate, it's about 70,000 to 80,000 merit points. It's not too much. One time, about 50 people can enter. You can charge a fee to open it. Each person will pay 1,000 merit points. Try it. Suyu was speechless. Teacher, stop fooling around. Bai Feng sneered, still going in. Entering my A*S. Moreover, this place requires a few mountains and seas to maintain it. Do you think you can open it just like that? Just money isn't enough. Stop dreaming. Suyu was depressed. Why are you trying to discourage me? I'm just asking. Teacher, is this purification difficult? Bai Feng glanced at him, he said unhappily, don't aim too high. Purification isn't difficult. It's just a little more money. For example, you can crush a few hundred pieces of the text of will, extract willpower, and remove the impurities over and over again. This will probably leave behind some pure willpower. Suyu was speechless. How extravagant. Could it be that this place was created like this? To eat money. Teacher, then have you already opened your divine aperture of the Myriad Literature Sutra? Bai Feng wanted to ridicule this student. How annoying. You're not flying, why do you keep asking such useless questions? This bastard. Even though he was scolding, he still said, there are 72 God apertures in the 10,000 literature classic. It's a little difficult to open God apertures. When we civilized masters are flying, we usually open 36 to form a large circle. When we reach Ling Yun, we open the remaining 36 to form an even larger circle. Opening 36 is enough. Suyu was a little surprised. He couldn't help but ask, then, does the level of the civilization masters in the sky also depend on the number of divine apertures opened? More or less. There's also the level of willpower. Bai Feng said casually, for example, you opened 4 divine apertures, and your willpower has reached the lower level of level 2. With divine runes entering level 2, you can be considered the most standard civilization master, first level of the sky soaring realm. Suyu blinked. That was it? Then does it count if you haven't materialized? Nonsense. Bai Feng was a little angry this time. How can it count if you haven't materialized? If you haven't materialized, your willpower hasn't reached tier 2, and you can't open your divine apertures, how can you be considered a civilized master? He suspected that his disciple had been swapped out. He wasn't stupid either. How could he ask such a stupid question? Su Yu was helpless and said vaguely, but I feel that my willpower is very strong. I'm already at the peak of Tier 1, and I also have a Tier 2 divine inscription. I'm just lacking a divine aperture. When I open my divine aperture, can I also be considered to have ascended? Ascend your head. Bai Feng rolled his eyes and said, if your true willpower has reached Tier 2, then you can manifest it. Su Yu was stunned. Teacher, then is that considered to have ascended? But what if my divine inscription hasn't been completed and I've already reached Tier 2? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 636. Chapter 636, Chapter 167. Grandmaster is on his way. 3. Bai Feng was also slightly taken aback. That's right, this kid Su Yu's willpower is still very tenacious. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly shook his head and said, that won't happen. You haven't fully accumulated your sea of will, so there's no way for it to overflow and materialize. At most, its strength is comparable to Tier 2, but it won't truly step into Tier 2. Unless your sea of will is fully accumulated and your willpower overflows, then it will only be considered as materializing. Su Yu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Bai Feng was very helpless. This fellow, he felt as if he was still a little worried that he would be able to enter the sky ahead of time. Can you do it? That little bit of accumulated strength. Just as he was thinking about it, he looked at Su Yu and said in a slight daze, what's your situation? Why do I feel that your accumulated strength has increased by a little? Su Yu smiled foolishly and said, I was cultivating in the fragment room just now, and I've made some progress. As he said that, he said mysteriously, Teacher, recently, I was in the basement communicating with the water people. The cultivation techniques of the 5 Elements clan can actually open the divine aperture while nourishing one's nature. Teacher, don't you think that if I were to learn it, wouldn't that be awesome? Bai Feng's head was throbbing, learn my A*S. Who didn't know that the cultivation techniques of the 5 Elements clan could open the divine aperture while nourishing one's nature? I know it too. I even know the true water element technique. The Academy also has the original water element technique and even has the other 4 elements technique. Go and learn it. If you learn it, I'll take you as my master, alright? Learn my A*S. Hurry up and scram. This B***** is very light-headed now. He only thinks about these good things day and night. Just as he was thinking about it, he was suddenly startled. He looked at him and muttered, did you learn their innate skill? What kind of opening did you open? Do you feel like you can deduce it? There had to be a foreshadowing. Su Yu nodded, he whispered, I've devoured the 5 Elements race's blood essence. Their innate skill is very special. What turns into water and gold is very difficult for humans to use. It's almost impossible to use the body, but willpower can change the form of willpower based on this. Su Yu was mysterious. He whispered even more, so I was wondering if I could deduce the 5 Elements technique. Teacher, do you think it's possible? Don't be so quiet. Bai Feng was speechless. What was he doing? He was acting like a thief. After some thought, he shook his head and said, it's different. Forget it. You can try it if you like. Even if you really succeed, you might not be able to open it. Let me tell you, don't mess around. The formula corresponds to the sea of will. This thing is much harder to recover than the physical body. Your senior sister Jia Jia's sea of will is damaged. It won't recover in a few months. You don't want to delay it for a few months, right? Su Yu nodded obediently and said, Teacher, if I really derive it, can I pass it on to senior sister? No way. Bai Feng said without hesitation, pass it on my ass. Even if this thing is really out, it must be kept a secret. Keeping a secret might not be a bad thing. If it really spreads, it might not be a good thing either. Let me tell you, the 10,000 clans are much more nurturing than the human clans. Think about it, if you give it to the 10,000 clans, hee. You're finished. Then what about the soul-devouring art? Suyu asked. This was also a very powerful cultivation technique. Bai Feng shook his head and said, it's different. The soul-devouring art is a martial technique, and it corresponds to the human clan's acupuncture points. Isn't that the same for the literary technique? Bai Feng was stunned for a moment. He scratched his head and thought for a moment before saying, that's true. The Sea of Will is actually different too. But, don't spread it randomly. As he said that, he was stunned as well. He didn't even study it or derive it, so why would he say that? It was as if he believed that he could derive it. Am I a teacher or is he? Seriously. Shaking his head, Bai Feng felt that he had been confused by him. He said unhappily, cut the crap. Even if you can really derive it, don't spread it around. Unless you are confident, it won't be a problem for you to spread it around. No one will find trouble with you. If there's trouble, you can still bear it. Suyu was embarrassed. Forget it, I can't handle it. However, he still said with some regret, that's too bad. The human race definitely has some powerful cultivation techniques, but for various reasons, they don't dare to leak it out. What a pity. It's not really a pity. Bai Feng smiled and said, if you really reach that stage, there will naturally be someone to teach you. It depends on your performance. For example, we have a cultivation technique that's actually quite powerful, but we're not going to teach it to you now. What cultivation technique? Suyu's interest was immediately piqued. The spirit nurturing technique is specially used to nurture divine literature. Otherwise, if we have more divine literature, how would we be able to rapidly strengthen divine literature? Forget about it now. Let's first complete the outline of your divine literature battle technique first. If I teach you now, you have already nurtured it into a Tier 2 divine literature. Let's see if you still want to complete the outline of your divine literature battle technique. Suyu was a little excited. There was a cultivation technique that specialized in nurturing divine literature. Teacher, Wan Mingze already has 3 Tier 2 divine literature. I don't even have as many as him. 3. Bai Feng was slightly stunned for a moment before he slowly said, 3 Tier 2 divine literature. Wan Mingze. Manor Head Wan's family. His eldest brother's grandson, I think. Bai Feng frowned slightly. At the nurturing stage, he does have 1 Tier 2 divine literature, and he also has 2. You are, 3 Tier 2 divine literature, slow down, stay away from him. Why? He might just be a sinister villain. Bai Feng explained, if he wants to nurture 3 Tier 2 divine runes, it means that his willpower has already had a chance of rising to the sky. In order to suppress himself, he used a large amount of willpower to nurture the divine runes. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 637. Chapter 637, Chapter 167 Martial Ancestor on the Road, Request Monthly Ticket Subscription, 4. This kind of person is suppressing himself and not advancing. If it's not for the sake of being invincible in the same level, it's also for the sake of scheming against someone. Bai Feng did not care too much and casually said, being invincible in the same level and being invincible in the nurturing stage, I feel that there's no need. Of course, I can't rule out the possibility that this kid is ambitious. The biggest possibility is that he's scheming against someone. Set who up? You. Bai Feng said matter-of-factly, if you don't fly, the academy won't be able to deal with you. If he doesn't fly, he can. Be careful. Most of these people are trained to deal with those who are not flying. Maybe it's the work of Wan, who is prepared to deal with someone. That's not me, right? Who knows? Bai Feng began to be irresponsible again. He said casually, if it wasn't you, could it be to deal with those brats from Zhangjing College? Or those bastards from the 10,000 clans? There must be a reason for that. Otherwise, this one what? I'm afraid he has a chance of advancing to Tinkong. Su Yu was speechless. There was such a saying. Wan Mingze might have already reached the peak of nurturing his nature, but in order to nurture those Tier 2 divine runes, his willpower had been consumed too much, and his realm had dropped. Bai Feng said again, this batch of yours has all sorts of things. It's not too normal. That fake name from last time wasn't too normal. Also, that kid from the Zheng family isn't a good person either. He might be hiding something. And this kid from the Wan family. Oh right, the Xia family. Bai Feng said suspiciously, Xia Chan from the Xia family. I originally thought that Zhou Mingren used her to deal with you, but now it doesn't seem like it. Xia Chan. I saw her last time. Her strength isn't bad, but it's just a so-so. The Xia family actually didn't have any particularly strong evildoers this time. Bai Feng shook his head and couldn't be bothered. Who knew what the Xia family was up to? However, Su Yu thought of Xia Huyo. This fellow, Xia Huyo, felt that he was even stronger than Xia Chan, but it was just a feeling. Teacher, have you heard of Xia Huyo? No. Is there such a person in the Xia family? How would I know? I'm not too familiar with him. I only know Xia Longgu, Xia Chongqing, Xia Sini, Xia Yuan. Forget it, it was a waste of time. Does the manor head have any descendants? He has a son, right? Bai Feng said uncertainly, he's a big shot. Your grandmaster might know about him, but I didn't interfere. The direct descendants of the Xia family usually hide themselves well and are afraid of being targeted by the enemy. After all, even if they can't deal with the manor head, dealing with his son wouldn't be a bad idea. If you really want to say that you know about him, he's an ordinary mountain and sea. Your teacher isn't a mountain and sea. Su Yu nodded again. He was a little uncertain in his heart. Xia Huyo was Xia Longwu's son. It didn't seem like it. Xia Longwu was heroic and divine, tall and mighty, iron-blooded and resolute, and powerful. His son was just like Xia Huyo. I don't believe it. The master and disciple chatted for a while before Su Yu ran up to cultivate again. He had opened the divine aperture. Other than opening his mind aperture, he also had to open other physical apertures, such as the soul-devouring techniques aperture. He did not learn it the last time. Otherwise, once he opened this aperture, his Yuan Qi would mutate and attach to his willpower, beating that Wang he would not be so troublesome. He would beat you until you wailed, and then go up and whip you to death. Su Yu had already gone all out the last time. Everyone knew his strength now. If someone were to target him again, he would definitely become stronger. He had to strengthen himself. After not seeing him for 3 days, he had another trump card. Whoever treated him as an honest person would not even know how to die. As long as I become stronger fast enough, it's useless even if you know my information. On Xia Huyo's side, he still owes me 4,000 merit points. Uncle Master will also transfer 5,000 merit points to me, which is 9,000 merit points. Su Yu thought about whether he should enter the mystic realm again. Opening the divine aperture and opening the body aperture. In addition, opening the body aperture a little more, he had to consider the matter of closing the aperture. Advancing to 10,000 stones was also not bad. In terms of martial techniques, I have Time, Heaven Breaker, and Thunder Origin Blade. But in terms of willpower, I don't know any martial techniques. Su Yu thought of another point. He might have to get a willpower skill to cultivate. Otherwise, just relying on the divine runes and willpower to fight against the enemy would not have any powerful advantages. I've opened so many books, there must be a willpower talent skill, right? If I open more God apertures, I might be able to use it. If willpower knows martial skills, then the lethality will soar. Suyu also had a headache. He kept feeling that there was not enough time. There were too many things to do. In the past few days, he didn't even go to the basic lessons. He didn't know if he would be able to receive the merit points for the position of class monitor next month. At the very least, he would get 3 merit points. Also, in the cultivation of willpower, even if my sea of will is saturated, I might not be able to withstand 99 divine inscriptions and the soul-expanding art. Suyu thought of Zhao Li. Should he ask Zhao Laoshe to give me a few dozen more hammers? He felt that after being hammered the last time, his sea of consciousness had expanded a little. Its tenacity had become stronger, and its explosive power had also become stronger. As Suyu cultivated, he thought of his next goal. The strength of the top 30 of the top 100. It would be best if he had the strength of the top 10 of the top 100 and could exchange blows with Tinkong. As for Tinkong, that was too early. The 99 divine inscriptions hadn't moved much recently. It seemed like he still had to take out a large amount of time to read those divine inscriptions. It would be too much of a waste if he bought a large batch and didn't read them. The night passed without a word. In the blink of an eye, it was the 7th day of the 10th month. At this moment, a shabby truck was heading toward the Great Xia Manor. At the same time, Heaven Battlefield, Human Realm entrance. Hong Tan excitedly walked toward the entrance. The moment he reached the entrance, he took out his identity card and was about to leave. A Shanghai realm expert who was guarding the entrance said in a deep voice, "Is that Hong Tan, a senior researcher of the Great Xia Civilization Academy? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories." Chapter 638. Chapter 638, Chapter 167. Grandmaster was on his way, please subscribe to the monthly 5. Hong Tan glanced at him, but he wasn't too familiar with him. He probably had a change of guard, so he didn't mind and nodded. A great war has broken out in the Sky-Eyed Divine Race region. According to the military orders on the battlefield, Researcher Hong needs to go to the battlefield now. Hong Tan said in surprise, "The Sky-Eye Divine Race's side? Isn't the Great Zhou Manor guarding there now? I'm a researcher from the Great Xia Manor. The military order from the front line, Shanghai must all go to assist in the battle." Hong Tan scratched his head. Military order, fine, he had to go. If he didn't go, the invincible old ghost guarding the front line would beat him to death. That's fine. Oh right, help me check if there's any news from the Great Xia Manor recently, and if anyone is looking for me. There's no news. Just as this person finished speaking, Hong Tan was stunned. Did you check? Shanghai, who was guarding this place, said calmly, "I've been paying attention, there's no need to check." Hong Tan frowned as he looked at him and suddenly said, "Where's the frontline transfer order?" The expert from Shanghai didn't say anything and took out a military order. Hong Tan took a look, suddenly, he scolded, "Scram! This isn't Invincible's transfer order. This is the transfer order of the Great Zhou General, what does it have to do with me? What the hell, what does it mean? The Demon Suppression Army is going to transfer the Great Zhou Manor to Shanghai, is the Great Zhou Manor going to Shanghai?" Hong Tan's face was filled with anger. "I was scared to death. I thought it was Invincible's transfer order, but in the end, it was the Great Zhou Army's transfer order. What did it have to do with him? The various manors did not command each other, and unless Invincible's transfer order was given, all human forces on the battlefield had to obey it. As for the Great Zhou Army's transfer order, out of humanitarian reasons, I could go to rescue them, but if I didn't want to go, no one could care. Hong Tan glared at Shan Hai and frowned. He snorted coldly and said, "Let me tell you, don't play tricks on me. Use the Great Zhou Army's military order to recruit me. Wait until that guy enters invincible. If he doesn't enter, then he doesn't have the right to mobilize me. Is that guy looking for trouble?" Shan Hai on the other side didn't reply and said calmly, "Even if it's not the invincible transfer order, can researcher Hong just leave me to die? Scram, don't play this game." Hong Tan did not fall for this game. Did something happen to the Great Xia Manor? Where are the people from the Great Xia Manor guarding this place? Hong Tan roared. Very quickly, a figure appeared. Hong Tan glanced at the other party. He said unhappily, "Ma, you're here. I thought you were dead. Did you know that the Great Zhou Manor wanted to transfer me? I've lost all face for the Great Xia Manor. When I go back, I'll report you." Did Zhou Mingren do something in the academy again, trying to stall me? Ma smiled and denied, "How is that possible? The Great Zhou Manor is indeed in trouble and needs your help. Why don't you have any compassion? Scram, you're smiling so happily. I suspect that you're gloating." Hong Tan couldn't be bothered with him. This person was also a pavilion elder of the Great Xia Civilization Academy, but he was just an expert of the single divine language department. The two of them had been at loggerheads for many years. He had some vague judgments in his heart, and he couldn't be bothered to say anything else. He took a step forward and was about to leave. Pavilion Elder Ma smiled and said, "Hong Tan, the human realm passage needs to be repaired for a few days. You can leave after a few days. You have nothing better to do. Why don't you go over there and take a look? Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda." Bang! Hong Tan slapped down. With a rumble, Elder Ma was pinned to the ground by an incomparably huge mountain. He couldn't get up no matter what. Around him, mountains and seas appeared one after another, but no one made a sound. Hong Tan said angrily, "Don't think that I'm easy to bully. Fix your grandpa, who are you lying to? If I can't kill that Zhou guy, how can I defeat that Ma guy? Do you really think that I, the 8th layer of the mountain sea, am a pushover? Believe it or not, I will go find Invincible and reason with him. You dare to stop me? Are you looking for death?" As he said that, he kicked Old Man Ma, who was pressed under the illusory mountain, away. Glancing at the person who had given him the order, he harumphed, he cursed, "Great Zhou Manor, don't bully us too much. I really can't. I will go to the War God Hall and look for the Great Xia King to make a decision. Bullying us for so many years should be enough. It will never end. I can't be bothered with you guys. Are you addicted to it? All these years, you've been thinking about your past friendship and don't want to care about anything. You've been bullying me again and again, haven't you?" Hong Tan's face was filled with anger. "Let me tell you, if I'm late and something happens to my disciple, it won't end with you guys. Oh right, there's also my senior brother's side. I'm warning you guys, don't play dirty with me. There are always a few shameless people in Invincible. The Lu family has saved so many people, yet Invincible doesn't think of showing any mercy. It's fine if I don't care about it normally, but if something happens to my senior brother, I'm going to throw caution to the wind. The whole human realm spread the word that you bastards are ungrateful, scheming against a human realm hero in order to plot against my master's divine text." A loud bang sounded. Hong Tan disappeared. He was sent flying by a palm strike, leaving the human realm passage and entering the human realm. In the next moment, another huge palm struck down. The mountain and sea that had taken out the transfer order earlier was directly smashed into pieces. Another palm strike struck down, and Ma Ji's body exploded, divine runes flying everywhere. Noisy. What the hell is going on in the heavenly battlefield? If there's a next time, the Great Zhou Civilization Academy will be destroyed. A cold snort shook the entire area. A moment later, someone said faintly, Great Zhou King, restrain yourself. The rear will cause a ruckus. If something like this happens on the front lines again, the Great Zhou army will retreat and seal off the Great Zhou Academy for 100 years. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell silent. Sealing off the Great Zhou Academy for 100 years, without any sources or resources, the Great Zhou Academy could be declared destroyed. Got it. A sigh could be heard. The two mountains and seas that had been smashed into pieces just now recovered in the next moment. Their faces were pale as they sent another palm strike down, grabbing the two of them and throwing them into the depths of the heavenly battlefield. Kill a mountain and sea, and the credit will be repaid. The two of them instantly disappeared from their original positions. Everything returned to silence. Around them, some mountain and sea realm experts and a few sun and moon realm experts had looks of admiration in their eyes. Invincible experts. Eternal realm experts. As for the two mountain and sea realm experts who had been thrown into the vanguard camp, no one cared about them. They couldn't be bothered to care about them. It was normal for Hong Tan to not cause a ruckus. However, if he caused a ruckus, the two of them would definitely be unlucky. This was the heavenly battlefield, not the Great Zhou Great Xia Manor. Invincible was constantly patrolling the area. Even if he caused trouble here, he couldn't be bothered to care about it. If he was thrown to the front lines, he would die. If he died, everything would be over. The person from the Great Zhou Institute of Civilization wasn't invincible yet. Even if he was, he didn't have the right to interfere here. As for Hong Tan, didn't he say that he was an honest person? Why did he suddenly fly into a rage? He even scolded Invincible. It just so happened that his anger was vented on these two. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 639. Chapter 639, Chapter 168 Strengthening Mutual Aid Association 1. In the fragment room, Suyu did not know that his grandmaster was about to return. He thought that his grandmaster had already been lost. Who knew when he would be able to return? He would just treat it as if his grandmaster was in seclusion. He had not seen him for a few months and would not recognize him even if he saw him. Cultivation. Continuous cultivation. 60 drops of 5 elements race blood essence were consumed by him bit by bit. His divine aperture was also continuously opening. In terms of willpower, there was no increase. He had used it to polish his divine aperture, but it was still maintained at about 70% of full capacity. It continued until the late night of the 7th, Suyu let out a long sigh. It was gone. The 3,000 merit points of the 5 elemental race blood essence was gone just like that. It was just one day and one night. 60 drops of blood essence had opened 20 divine apertures. On average, 3 drops had opened 1 divine aperture. The speed was not slow, but just like the Yuan Qi aperture, there were a lot of impurities. The aperture was a little dim, so Suyu felt that it needed to be purified. The bright bird blood essence could purify Yuan Qi, but it could not purify willpower. Willpower did not know how to purify it either. Suyu had not found a suitable Yuan formula for the time being. He would try them one by one after some time. The 20 god apertures had not formed a system yet. But he could take the initiative to absorb some willpower. At this moment, he was slowly strengthening Suyu's willpower. It's different after opening the divine aperture. Suyu sighed with emotion. Very good, very powerful. After opening the divine aperture, his senses became even sharper. He had opened too many of his physical body's acupuncture points. Many times, his brain could not keep up with his body's instincts. However, once the divine aperture was opened, Suyu's sense of dislocation became much less. He felt that he could be even faster. For a martial technique like time, opening the acupuncture points in the legs was mainly about speed. It was as fast as the passage of time. It was so fast that it could destroy mountains and seas, and it could suppress the sun and moon. The 5 elements' essence blood is gone. I can only slowly open the other divine apertures, or I can go find Xia Huyo and ask if there are any more. There were not many 5 elements races. Under normal circumstances, killing one 5 elements race for 10,000 stones could only condense 10 drops of essence blood. Suyu had already swallowed 70 drops of essence blood, and he had used 10 drops previously. It was equivalent to indirectly killing 7 5 elements races' lives. Of course, Suyu felt that he had indirectly killed even more mountain-breaking bulls. From start to finish, he had nearly consumed 1,000 drops, and nearly 100 mountain-breaking bulls had died. He did not know if mountain-breaking bulls had lost a direct subordinate team of 100 bulls on the heavenly battlefield. I still need to open some apertures to cultivate the soul-devouring art. There were 36 apertures opened for the soul-devouring art, but there were more overlaps. After all, Suyu had already opened quite a number of apertures. After opening 12 more, he would be able to use the soul-devouring art. Before meeting Xia Huyo, Suyu went to Shenghong Tea House. On the 2nd floor. At the same place. Hu Zongqi was waiting for Suyu to arrive. When the door opened, Hu Zongqi smiled. Everyone in the academy knows about you now. At this moment, it was already late at night. The tea house had already closed. Suyu turned his head to look at the other side of the stairs. Hu Zongqi smiled and said, "This side has been taken over by me. The shopkeeper is a relative of my Hu family, a distant relative. I pity him and found him a job to do." Suyu nodded slightly and said, "That's good. I'm not afraid. It's mainly because I've offended many people. You're close to me, so it's easy to be implicated." Hu Zongqi smiled and nodded. He naturally understood this logic. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken over this tea house. The two entered the private room. Suyu didn't stand on ceremony and went straight to the point. "Did you hear some news? Did you suddenly want to see me?" "Yes." Hu Zongqi nodded. He said softly, "The few pavilion elders of the school's single divine language department have disappeared. Only Principal Zhou is still in the school. It happened yesterday afternoon. At night, Pavilion Elder Li came back. He seems to be injured." "Disappeared?" Suyu was surprised and injured. What happened? This was not a battlefield. This was the Great Xia Manor. Suyu started to pay attention. "What's the situation? Tell me more." Hu Zongqi said in a low voice, "I don't know the specifics. Even my second grandfather doesn't know. Not only did they disappear, but many elders also disappeared. The academy has a total of 42 elders and 36 Shanhai realm. This is not counting the 10,000 manor heads. Now, there are 8 who went to the heavens battlefield, including Elder Hong, that's 9. 9 were in the heavens battlefield, a quarter, not too many." Hu Zongqi continued, "Out of the other 27 Shanhai realm pavilion elders, 8 are in seclusion. There are only 19 who are active in the academy, and with the manor heads, there are 20 Shanhai realm experts." Suyu nodded again, and Hu Zongqi gave a brief introduction. Very quickly, he said, "And yesterday, out of the 20 Shanhai realm experts, at least 6 of them left at the same time. This is what my second grandfather said. These days, I often go there, and I just happened to run into you, so I stayed there for a while. 6 mountains and seas left at the same time. Something big had happened. What was it? Was it related to him?" Suyu shook his head. He was thinking too much. What did it have to do with him? With so many pavilion elders leaving, could it be that they wanted to exterminate the religion of the 10,000 races? Other than knowing that they left, is there anything else? Hu Zongqi thought for a moment before saying, "I really don't know the specifics, but when they left." "No, it was when Pavilion Elder Li was injured and came back. When second grandfather heard the news, he suddenly said something. Why did that guy come back? It's going to be troublesome again. Return? Suyu muttered. Who had returned? It was obvious that Hu Yuhui knew something and knew the person he was talking about. Was he coming back? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 640. Chapter 640, Chapter 168 Strengthening the Mutual Aid Association Requests for Two. Who was it? Hu Zongqi did not wait for Suyu to figure it out and continued, it might have something to do with you guys, that's why I'm telling you. Suyu looked at him, feeling a little strange. That's right, if it had nothing to do with me, Hu Zongqi did not need to come and talk to me about this. It has something to do with us. Is it related to the polytheistic faction? That's right. Hu Zongqi nodded and said, I asked my second grandfather about it in a roundabout way, but he didn't say much. He only said that it was fine if he didn't mention some of the people who were expelled. I thought about it, the expulsion, could it be related to those people who were expelled from the polytheistic faction 50 years ago? Suyu's expression changed slightly. Expelled. This word was too familiar. Lu Wenyan. Suyu frowned. Was he talking about Teacher Lu? That couldn't be. Teacher Lu had been in Nanyuan the entire time, and he hadn't said that he was coming back. However, he didn't manage to get through to him last night. Thinking of this, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Wait a moment. After saying that, Suyu took out his communicator and quickly dialed a number. After waiting for a long time, it was already late at night. However, someone still picked up and said in dissatisfaction, who is it? Uncle Chen. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the call was connected, he quickly said, Uncle Chen, it's me, Suyu. Ah you. On the other side, Chen Qinghe woke up and was a little surprised. He hurriedly asked, Ah you, what's the matter? In the middle of the night, Suyu suddenly called. What was wrong? Uncle Chen, I tried to call my teacher previously, but I couldn't get through. You're in Nanyuan. Is my teacher all right? You mean Teacher Lu? Yes. He's fine. He's fine. However, he hasn't been in the academy for the past 2 days, right? Chen Qinghe wasn't too sure. He thought for a moment and said, I don't think so. Yesterday, my subordinates told me that the head of the Wang residence drove his broken-down car out of the city. Teacher Lu seems to have followed him. I wonder if he's gone out of the city. Out of the city? Where did he go? Do you know? I'm not sure about that. Did he go to Tianshui to buy things? Chen Qinghe smiled and said, why don't I help you ask around? I have a friend at the school. I'll help you ask around. Is it urgent? Then I'll have to trouble Uncle Chen. You're welcome. The call was hung up. In the middle of the night, Chen Qinghe thought for a while and still dialed a number to ask around. A few minutes later, Suyu's call sounded. Ah you, I've asked around. The head of the Wang residence and Teacher Lu have both taken leave, and it's a long leave. The lessons will be temporarily taken over by other teachers. I'm not too sure about the details. I understand. Thank you, Uncle Chen. Sorry for the trouble. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Suyu ended the call. Teacher Lu was no longer in Nanyuan. Suyu frowned. The pavilion elders of the single divine language department had suddenly left. There were even people who were injured. It was obvious that a battle had occurred. Could it be, that it couldn't be? Were these people so bold as to make a move in the Great Xia manner? Teacher Lu was just a weakling who had just soared into the sky. Would the pavilion elders personally make a move against him? Would they? As he thought of this, Suyu forced himself to remain calm and said in a low voice, thank you very much. Zongqi, it was all thanks to you that I received the news this time. You're welcome. Hu Zongqi smiled and said, of course, as long as the news is useful. Su Yu, don't be too anxious. To be honest, with our strength, it's useless to be anxious. If there's really trouble now, it's best to stay in the academy. If we go out, I'm worried that you'll be in danger. In the academy, Wan Tianxing was still there, so nothing would happen to him. Outside the academy, the city would be better. Outside the city, it would be like a bird flying in the sky. I understand. Su Yu nodded slightly and thought for a moment. Help me find out about Zhai Feng's situation and Qiu Yun, who is ranked 24th. In the Divine Literature department alone, Zhou Mingren's faction had 4 people on the top 100. Apart from Huang Qifeng, there were 3 others. Zhai Feng was ranked 9th previously, so he was the strongest. The other was Qiu Yun. These 2 people were Zhou Pingsheng's disciples. The other person was Hu Wenqing's disciple, Chen Qi's senior brother. However, he kept a low profile, so there was hardly anyone to be seen. Them. Hu Zongqi said in surprise, Su Yu, you didn't enter Wanshi, right? No. Su Yu smiled and shook his head. Help me investigate the specific situation. Sometimes, I can't trust the information from the outside world. He had no choice but to interfere in matters outside the academy. However, if something were to happen to Lu Laoshi, he would be able to make them suffer in the academy. Zhai Feng, who was ranked 9th, had a battle prowess close to that of soaring in the sky. Su Yu wasn't a match for him. However, Qiu Yun, who was ranked 24th, wasn't a match for him. If he were to open some of his acupoints and use the soul-devouring art, coupled with the fact that he had opened so many of his divine apertures, he might be able to kill her. He did not want to implicate anyone or vent his anger on anyone. However, if the Divine Literature department took the initiative to find trouble, he did not mind beating them up. In the academy, he was not afraid of anything. Thinking of this, Su Yu suddenly said, the other pavilion elders, if there are any disciples in the top 100, please check for me. It's troublesome. Some of the information from before is outdated, and I'm not sure now. That's simple. Hu Zongqi nodded and was a little shocked. Su Yu, who had entered the school at the same time as him, now had the idea of reaching the top 30 students. It was really scary. His progress was too fast. Su Yu also thought of him and asked, have you cultivated the pure origin technique? Yes. Hu Zongqi nodded, but he quickly said, as a minor, my major is still the Aries technique. I also entered the mystic realm once and broke through Qianjun. Now, I have only opened 18 apertures, but I have also opened a few apertures for the pure origin technique. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 641. Chapter 641, Chapter 168 Strengthening the Mutual Aid Association 3. There were 18 people who had gained enlightenment, but they had not even reached the second stage of Qianjun. They were very weak. However, for the new students, they had only been in school for less than 3 months, which was already very good. Not everyone who entered school was in Qianjun realm, and not everyone was Su Yu. Enlightenment is too slow. Su Yu said this, and Hu Zongqi was a little embarrassed. Su Yu did not have any intention of discouraging him. He thought for a moment and said, in our circle, even if we can't be very strong, we can't be too weak. If you're too weak, no one will take you seriously, and you won't be able to enter some high-end circles. You won't be able to find out some important news, and you can't always count on your second grandfather's side. Hu Zongqi said a little awkwardly, My awakening speed isn't very fast. That's fine. Su Yu pondered for a moment and said, after learning the essence cleansing art, you can wash your acupoints. So, it doesn't matter much if you consume some blood essence crazily in the early stage. Unlike others, if you consume too much blood essence, it's easy to cause your foundation to be unstable. You can consume blood essence, pills, and other things. It doesn't matter if you consume too much. Don't forget the effect of the essence cleansing art. Hu Zongqi nodded. He was too embarrassed to say that this was a matter of money. The cost was too great. Tomorrow and the day after, I'll go challenge the top 100. You just have to look for Xia Huyo to bet on my victory. As long as I challenge one round, you can bet on one round. You can bet as much as you want. If you believe in me, then bet. Hu Zongqi smiled bitterly. I do believe in you, but the others also know how powerful you are. This plate won't open. That's in the front. Tell me, if I challenge Qiu Yun, can this plate still be opened? Yes. This time, Hu Zongqi nodded and said somewhat agitatedly, are the chances high? Do you believe me? Yes. Hu Zongqi nodded, then he said with a smile, then I won't ask how high the chances are. You have to be careful. Over at the academy, I actually heard some words from my second grandfather. I feel that it will definitely be chaotic recently. Of course, it won't be too chaotic, but it will definitely not be peaceful. If you don't have the strength at this time, you really don't have the right to speak. Yes, if you win merit points, then exchange your blood essence for pills and enter the Yuan Qi mystic realm to cultivate. I can't enter. Hu Zongqi said with a wry smile, it's just one chance, and it's still because I'm above average. Otherwise, I won't be able to enter. I don't have enough merit points to accumulate. Su Yu wanted to retort. Forget it, he had forgotten about this matter. That's right, there were not many freshmen who could enter. Mystic Realm. Su Yu touched his chin. The Yuan Qi Mystic Realm was very important. At least, it was extremely important to the students who did not have time to fly. To be able to enter the Mystic Realm to cultivate once, that speed was 10 times faster than outside. Even if one were to devour essence blood, there were checkpoints outside and there was a limit. Only in the Mystic Realm could one devour and cultivate without restraint. I'll think of a way. Su Yu said in a deep voice, let's see if we can send you in to cultivate without accumulating merits. Su Yu, this. Hu Zongqi said uneasily, will this work? I'll give it a try. Su Yu was not sure either. He would give it a try first. If he really succeeded, he could let Hu Zongqi know that he was still very strong and had a lot of energy. Su Yu quickly walked out of the building without talking to Hu Zongqi anymore. He smiled and nodded when he saw the shopkeeper guarding the door. The shopkeeper was shocked when he saw how gentle Su Yu was. He waited for Hu Zongqi to come downstairs and said in a low voice, second young master, this person, seems like a big shot. Hu Zongqi couldn't help but laugh. Third uncle, don't call him young master. It's ugly. This person, you're right. As long as he passes, he'll be a big shot. This strength. Sigh. He couldn't believe it. Every day was different. In just a few days, he was going to challenge the 24-year-old Qiu Yun. It was really too terrifying. Third uncle, help me do something. Second young master, what do you think? I said don't, forget it. Hu Zongqi didn't say anything else, he quickly said, help me get someone to sell all my properties in Tianshui. Tell my mother that her son has committed a crime outside and needs money to settle it. Ask my mother not to hold on to his past and lend it to me first. Second young master, this. Hu Zongqi exhaled and said, we have to gamble once. Third uncle, I'm a silk pants at home. There's no way around it. My brother is amazing and a genius. What about me? I'm still alright. I went to middle school and entered a civilized university. But when I'm in the university, I'm nothing. If I don't seize the opportunity, I'll just muddle along for a few decades, soar into the sky, then return to Tianshui and become an official. How boring. Hu Zongqi chuckled and said, I'll first spend money and promote myself. As for the future. If I don't do well, then I won't need the future. If I do well, then I won't be short of money in the future. Understood. The old man nodded and said softly, second young master is actually a genius. This is Qianjun. Hu Zongqi didn't want to say anything. Qianjun. It was nothing. Yes, in less than 3 months, Qianjun was already there. Moreover, the second stage was not too far away. However, he wanted to try competing with Su Yu. He could not even see the tail of the top 100 list. There were so many geniuses, but Su Yu did not look for him. Instead, he looked for him. He knew that Su Yu had some thoughts and secrets. He felt that he was too strong and could not be suppressed. He understood that his family background was too strong and could not be suppressed. The key was that even if he was weak, he could not be too weak. Otherwise, if Su Yu improved too quickly, he would feel that he was worthless. Didn't he see that Su Yu didn't say anything when he said that it was a matter of life and death? Hu Zongqi gritted his teeth. This thigh, he couldn't lose it. His second grandfather wasn't his own grandfather. Could he still count on it for a lifetime? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 642. Chapter 642, Chapter 168 Strengthening Mutual Aid Association 4. No matter how difficult it was for Su Yu and the others, they still had the support of an 8th-level Mountain Sea expert. Just the essence cleansing art alone was already an incredible treasure to him. If this thing were to spread out, it would also be a treasure that could purify Yuan Qi. If it wasn't a top-tier family, how many would have this? Su Yu didn't care about Hu Zongqi's thoughts. It did not matter if he could keep up with him. It was enough that he could borrow some strength. For example, some information channels that Su Yu did not know would naturally be told to him. I have to recruit more people. The circle was still too small. When he could recruit some people who could get in touch with the upper circles, he would be able to keep his information flowing. He would know more and understand more of the situation. Half an hour later. In the nature garden, next to a rockery. It was dark. Lin Yao asked curiously, Brother Su, what are we doing here in the middle of the night? After he said that, he said excitedly, Brother Su, my teacher's position has risen. It has even benefited me and my senior brother. He has received more than 30 merit points in a month. Su Yu was stunned. His position had risen. Stop fooling around. I tricked Lu Hong so much, but he's actually fine. After thinking about it, he could only say that Lu Hong was really cunning. He might have thrown the blame onto Zhou Pingsheng. He didn't say much about this. Su Yu smiled and said, Congratulations. This was all within our expectations, including that pavilion elder who was severely injured. If he wasn't severely injured, how would Teacher Lu have the opportunity to showcase himself? The aftermath of the top 100 rankings was also to create an opportunity for Teacher Lu. I guessed it. Lin Yao was a little excited. I guessed that you and Teacher were putting on an act. You intentionally made an enemy out of Teacher and spoke ill of Teacher so that the principal would trust Teacher more. I guessed it. You are amazing. Damn it, I made it up, but you actually guessed it. Lin Yao, your brain is really agile. Right now, I can't be too close to Lu Laoshi. As Su Yu spoke, he said in a deep voice, Right, your grandfather is also an expert of the single divine prose faction. If he severely injured Elder Zheng, will your grandfather? It's fine. Lin Yao said nonchalantly, we aren't on the same side as them. We are on Elder Fang's side, and Manor Head Zhou and the others have always been overbearing. Of course, my grandfather and Manor Head Zhou's relationship isn't too bad. They don't really side with each other, so I'll just fool them like this. That's good. We don't want to hurt the relationship. Suyu smiled and nodded. He said softly, Brother Lin, to be honest, Teacher Lu and I, including many people, want to change something. But we're not strong enough, so we can only do it secretly. Brother Lin, you're Teacher Lu's student, and we don't know each other without fighting. I agree with your character. But, I say, if one day we decide to overthrow some of the existing things, can Brother Lin still stand firmly on our side? Lin Yao frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, Brother Su, don't tell me that you want to overthrow the entire single divine language department. That won't be necessary, and I'm not that strong. Lin Yao thought for a while, and said, I'm not that kind of selfless person. As long as I don't hurt my grandfather, it doesn't have much to do with me. Teacher won, you won. To put it bluntly, what does it have to do with me if other people get into trouble? Suyu smiled, nodded, and said in a low voice, then I officially invite you to join the association now. Don't ask how many people there are, don't ask who they are. I'm your only contact. Everything else is confidential. As he said that, he briefly explained the situation of the association. Lin Yao was a little excited and said, the association. Is teacher also in it? I said, don't ask anyone, don't ask how many people. Suyu said seriously, now, it's just a small circle. It can't be spread, can't be made public. Including Teacher Lu's side, don't ask him if he is a member of the association, he won't know that you joined the association. All the information about the association can't be spread, or else, you will be kicked out. Lin Yao nodded hurriedly and said in a low voice, I understand. What can I do? Spread the information and collect the information. Isn't your grandfather a Lingyun realm powerhouse? He has a good relationship with Principal Zhou. I believe that he knows a lot of things. If you feel that you can disclose it, then tell me. If you can't disclose it, then forget it. As he said that, Suyu said again, of course, everything is not free. In the association, we pay attention to fair and just exchange. We have people to evaluate the value of the information you bring. In the end, you can exchange it for something you want. Something you want. Lin Yao hesitated and said, I still have enough cultivation resources now. Suyu shook his head, Brother Lin, you are too easy to be satisfied. Where did that domineering man who asked me for the mountain ox essence blood go to? Didn't you want to compete for the top 100? Now, don't tell me you're giving up so easily. So many people in the class have entered the top 100, and you don't have any thoughts at all. Lin Yao was slightly startled. I feel that ever since you negotiated with me, you seem to have lost your fighting spirit. If I had known this earlier, I would have continued to be my enemy. Brother Lin, don't forget that you belong to the single divine text department while I belong to the multi-divine text department. From now on, you and I are still enemies and rivals. You wish you could skin me alive. That's you, Lin Yao. Lin Yao's expression turned serious. After thinking for a moment, he nodded and said solemnly, I've learned my lesson. I was a little carried away. I felt that since Brother Su isn't an enemy, why should I fight for anything, now? I know that I'm wrong. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 643. Chapter 643, Chapter 168, Strengthening the Association. Subscribe, 5. That's right. Suyu said softly, we have many good things. The techniques used to purify Yuan Qi, including the Soul Eater technique that I mentioned before, as well as the innate skill blood essence, and even some techniques to strengthen the body, all kinds of will writings, there are many, many. How can there be nothing that you need? All of this can only be obtained by our own people. Lin Yao gulped and said softly, can these things be passed on? Why not? It was created by our own people, researched, and not obtained through other channels. Created by our own people. Lin Yao was alarmed. How many people had joined this association? And how many experts were there? If there were more people from the Divine Literature Department, then there would be quite a number of them. If there were only the Divine Literature Department, then what about the other sects? Lin Yao was shocked. His teacher had most likely joined them. There were probably some other people who had also joined them. For example, that Xia Huyo from the Xia family. He felt that he had joined a very impressive organization. Perhaps, there was a shocking force hidden within the academy that even the head of the academy did not know about. Thinking about it, he was quite excited. Su Yu suddenly said, "Brother Lin, your strength is too weak. On September 1st, you entered the Qianjun realm. Now, you are only at the second stage of Qianjun realm. You have not even reached the third stage. This is not possible." This. Lin Yao was embarrassed. It was going to happen soon. The Mutual Aid Association has a technique called Pure Origin Technique. It is specially used to remove impurities in the acupuncture points. I have used it before. You have seen my situation. You know how strong I am. After learning this, you can swallow a large amount of blood essence and pills to advance. After that, you can remove the impurities and your cultivation speed will soar. It will not delay the advancement of 10,000 stones. Lin Yao's eyes lit up. The kind that you have used before? Yes. How many merit points can I exchange? It is not merit points. It is the internal mutual aid points. It is the same as merit points. However, you have to contribute in order to receive the mutual aid points. As Su Yu said this, he was stunned for a moment. Damn it, why does it feel like I am doing the Myriad Clan cult? Then, he threw this thought away. I'm not going against the human race. It's just to protect myself. Who cares? 10 points will do. Insiders, these basic techniques aren't expensive. Even if the outside world offers 1,000 merit points, they won't sell. 10 points will do. Lin Yao was stunned. This association was really so F***ing amazing. No wonder Su Yu improved so quickly. This was too cheap. Then any piece of news can be exchanged for a mutual aid point. Lin Yao was anxious and hurriedly said, I know a piece of news. I wonder if it can be exchanged for a mutual aid point. Tell me about it. It's like this. A few months ago, the Heavenly Yi Divine Sect launched an attack on the Great Xia Mansion. The sect master was killed by the mansion master. The upper echelons of the Heavenly Yi Divine Sect were wiped out in one fell swoop. However, no one found their treasury. I heard from my grandfather that the Dragon Martial Guards had searched it before, but they were unable to find it. Lin Yao said quickly, then my grandfather said that there was still hope to find it, but the mansion master didn't bother to look for it. Their leader's body was thrown into the pit of all races. My grandfather said to extract a drop of blood essence and search for someone who could break the memory imprint of the blood essence. Maybe we can see the memory. Of course, there are very few experts who can break this. Those who can really do it won't care about this. Lin Yao said nervously, can we exchange this for a support point? I don't think it's very useful, but if it's related to a big shot, maybe the big shot in the meeting would be interested. Su Yu was stunned. There was such a thing. Also, did Lin Yao really think that there was a big shot in the meeting? Is it very difficult to extract the memory imprint? He was a little surprised. Was it very difficult? Bai Feng knew how to do it. He was also learning. It's very difficult. Lin Yao nodded and said, my grandfather said that there aren't many experts who are good at separating the memory imprint. Even the manor head isn't good at it. Otherwise, he would have done it long ago. Our manor heads might know how to do it, but they would be too embarrassed to go over there and steal the corpse to extract the blood essence. Embarrassed? Su Yu muttered to himself. Mansion Master Wan felt very shameless. Would he be embarrassed? He probably had some misgivings. After all, extracting the essence blood of humans, even if it was taught by the Wan clan, was not something that could be done openly. Of course, if Xiao Longwu knew how to do it, he would not have those misgivings. I got it. I will get someone to evaluate this news. If it is useful, there will definitely be a lot of help points. I think it is not a big problem to exchange it for a pure energy spell book. Of course, even if it is exchanged, it must not be spread out and it must not be known by others. Do you understand? Don't worry, I understand. Lin Yao nodded seriously. How could he not understand this? The law should not be passed down lightly. If you casually spread the cultivation technique created by a big shot, people would die. This had happened too many times. After settling Lin Yao, he received news that he did not know if it was valuable or not. Suyu let out a long sigh. There were 3 people in the association. Not bad. They were all top-tier geniuses. Even Hu Zongqi was above average. In fact, he wasn't weak at all. It was just that he was a little weak to Suyu. Lu Laoshi. Since he couldn't contact Lu Wenyan, the single Divine One faction might be targeting him. Suyu cursed in his heart. He didn't know if he should tell his uncle master and teacher. After all, his uncle master hadn't reached the mountains and seas yet. He still had to guard the library pavilion. If he left, sigh. He was too weak. It was a pity that his uncle master didn't reach the mountains and seas. What does Lingyan need to reach the mountains and seas? Cultivation techniques or something? If it's not possible, I can provide some cultivation techniques. Suyu lacked everything, but he didn't lack any cultivation techniques. Furthermore, they were cultivation techniques that were suitable for humans. He really had a lot of them. From start to finish, he had opened more than 80 albums. His uncle master seemed to have been stuck in Lingyun for quite some time. He didn't know what was going on either. If he entered the mountains and seas, the ability of the many divine inscriptions faction would be even stronger. After becoming a pavilion elder, he would at least have a lot of authority in the academy. And teacher Zhao. Suyu exhaled once more and continued running without stopping. First, he went to look for Xiaohuyo. After looking for him, it would be dawn soon. Tomorrow was the 8th. It was time for him to visit teacher Zhao. If possible, he could give me a few dozen hammers. While he was at it, he asked if he could open a back door for me to enter the Yuan Qi mystic realm. Did teacher Zhao's father not have any special privileges in the Yuan Qi mystic realm? If he had the right to not use it, it would be revoked upon expiration. Suyu thought regretfully, perhaps. I can discuss with teacher. The multi-divine literature branch has been cancelled anyway. Why don't I go and acknowledge teacher Zhao as my teacher? Of course, I can minor in the multi-divine prose faction. We're still a family, so there's no need to be angry. If I manage to get some benefits, I can also share some with you guys. In that case, the Yuan Qi mystic realm will be mine. How great would that be? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 644. Chapter 644, Chapter 169. When Suyu found Xiaohuyo had just woken up and was still a little confused. It was too late. It was almost 4 a.m. Xiaohuyo had just woken up and was a little confused. Suyu was not confused. Just as he was about to speak, his heart suddenly jolted. What did he see? A faint mist surrounded Xiaohuyo and was slowly absorbed by him. Soon, the faint mist disappeared. Divine aperture activated. Suyu had just opened 20 divine apertures, so he was too familiar with this state. That faint mist clearly came from somewhere. Soaring into the sky. Suyu was secretly shocked. Xia Huyo was soaring into the sky. Something wasn't right. If he was soaring into the sky, his willpower would be fully charged and manifest, and his willpower would enter rank 2. It would be somewhat different. Unless Xia Huyo was too strong and concealed his strength, so others wouldn't be able to tell. If he wasn't soaring in the sky, then this guy had opened his divine aperture, and he had the cultivation technique of the recuperation stage. Su Yu was astonished. Didn't they say that there was no cultivation technique of the recuperation stage? Or could it be, there was, but it was monopolized by some big families? So Xia Huyo knew because he was an important figure in the Xia family. Su Yu, it's the middle of the night. If you have something to say, you can say it tomorrow. Xia Huyo yawned and felt a little sleepy. Did Su Yu not sleep all day long? As for when he had just woken up and that tiny bit of willpower had been absorbed by him, he did not care too much about it. Su Yu was not floating in the air, so he could not sense anything. It was just a small amount, and it was quickly absorbed. Even if he was floating in the air and did not care, he would not see it. Su Yu remained expressionless and smiled. There are too many things to do. Sorry to trouble you. Huyo, let me ask you something. Do you sell any basic cultivation techniques here? It's the cultivation technique for cultivating the divine aperture in the recuperation stage. No. Xia Huyu said directly, how can this thing be sold? Su Yu interrupted, does that mean that there is such a thing? Su Yu whispered, you know a lot. Tell me, does this human realm have such a text formula? Xia Huyu scratched his head and smiled foolishly, there is definitely something, but it is usually a secret that is not passed down. There are so many invincible experts, there must be someone who can derive some basic text formulas that are suitable for us to cultivate. Then, since they are derived by invincible, why don't they spread it like the basic incantations? It's different. Xia Huyo shook his head and said, let's put it this way, everyone can become a warrior. Only a small group of people can become a civilized master. And that small group of people actually stands at the top of society. Those who study civilized masters are either from big families or inherited from civilized families. There are also unorthodox paths, but the proportion is very small. Even if the basic mantras were created, the commoners wouldn't be able to obtain them. They wouldn't be able to learn them, and they wouldn't have the conditions to learn them. Thus, in the end, they would still fall into the hands of those large clans. Xia Huyu was somewhat clear-headed, he continued, this way, the class of civilized masters would solidify even more. Not teaching them might not necessarily be a bad thing. Of course, there were also selfish motives. Civilized master clans all wished for their own civilized masters to be stronger, just like how some warrior clans wouldn't teach the cultivation techniques they created to others. Xia Huyo smiled and said, it's impossible for all cultivation techniques to be spread. It's the same for any race. For powerful races like fiend gods, some of their powerful cultivation techniques will not be passed down to ordinary fiend gods. Su Yu nodded slightly. That means that this kind of cultivation technique really exists, right? It should be. Xia Huyo gave a vague answer. Su Yu thought for a moment and said, then what if this kind of cultivation technique is spread out? Xia Huyo thought for a moment and said, then in the future, the number of civilized masters will increase, the competition for resources will become more difficult, and the text of will not be enough. Of course, these are the disadvantages, but there are also advantages. Civilized masters advance faster and form battle strength faster, saving some time for advancing to higher levels in the future. After saying that, he smiled and said, Su Yu, no one will sell this thing, so don't think about it. Moreover, even if there is a human realm, I'm afraid there won't be many. Generally, even the people of my family may not teach all of it. Xia Huyo shook his head and said, let me put it this way. If you want to share everything openly, it's impossible now. Unless one day, when the human race is really at the end of its rope, they have no choice but to unite to resist the 10,000 clans. When all of them are united, they are facing a desperate situation. At that time, it probably doesn't matter what cultivation method or not. But now, the human race is still one of the strong clans. Although their situation isn't too good, they still have more victories than losses on the heavenly battlefield. At this time, it's unrealistic for you to expect cultivation methods to be spread at will. Is the situation very good? Suyu said indifferently, the situation is not too bad. The demon suppression army would not have issued the conscription orders for veterans several times. My father would not have returned to the battlefield at the age of nearly 50. Xia Huyu was slightly embarrassed, he coughed lightly and said, the situation of the demon suppression army is not quite the same. This is mainly because the Great Xia Manor had too many wars in the past few years and many big wars broke out. You know that the Great Xia Manor is belligerent. The manor head of the Xia Manor has a fierce personality. He cannot be wronged and is not willing to compromise. As long as someone provokes, he will definitely send troops. This resulted in the demon suppression army suffering heavy losses and had no choice but to recruit troops to replenish the army. Suyu fell into deep thought and said, does this mean that the losses of the other manors are not too great? Not too great. Xia Huyo shook his head and said, the other manors have also gone on expeditions, but strictly speaking, the races that they have gone on expeditions are not considered powerful races. Only our great Xia manors are facing the strong races of gods and demons. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 645. Chapter 645, Chapter 169 was insisted on. 2. Why? Xia Huyo sighed, what else could it be? It has something to do with the character of the great Xia king. He is the kind of character that you don't dare to and I don't dare to. If you don't dare to guard this place, I will. If you don't dare to break out into a conflict, I will fight back. The Xia family's manor heads are all like this, so the battle line is getting longer and longer. We have already entered the battlefield of the heavens, so naturally, we will encounter more powerful clans. Don't we care about the other invincible clans? Of course, but the invincible clans only care about wars at the invincible level. They won't interfere too much in the wars below. Xia Hu saw his doubt and said, of course, just because there are many battles doesn't mean it's not good. At the very least, we have come into contact with more battles, so the probability of experts appearing is higher. The great Xia clan has the intention of raising Gu. He had nothing to hide, he said directly, the survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. The great Xia manor had the highest probability of producing an expert in the heavenly battlefield. In the entire great Xia manor, their strength was actually at the top. Among the 36 manors in the human realm, the great Xia manor's strength has always been in the top 3. 36 manors in the human realm. Suyu frowned and said, why is it 36 manors? The book says that it's 38 manors in the human realm. Xia Huyo scratched his head and said, I'm talking about the big manors, not the small manors. There are 2 small manors in the human realm. The book doesn't describe it in detail. One of them is the heavenly mansion, which is the area where the human realm and the heavenly battlefield passage are located. The other one is the twin saint manors, which is also the core of the human race, where the 2 holy lands are located. The War God Hall and the Quest Realm are both in that area. Suyu nodded and said snappily, I know that. It seems like you didn't include these 2 mansions. I was still wondering if our great Xia mansions are that strong. Second only to the dual saint mansions. There's not much of a difference. Xia Huyo shrugged and said, the great Xia mansions are not talking about anything else. Just based on their combat strength and the number of experts, they are ranked very high. The other one is the great Zhou mansions, which are old and powerful mansions. They have plundered more resources than us in the heavenly battlefield, so there are quite a number of experts as well. Other than the Great Xia and the Great Zhou Manor, who else is in the top 3? The Great Qin Manor. Xia Huyo said directly, that side is also strong. The Great Qin King's combat strength is at the top even among the unrivaled. Suyu thought for a moment and said, so that means that there are a total of 36 unrivaled realm experts in the 2 great holy lands? I don't know about that. Xia Huyo smiled and said, other than invincible realm experts, no one knows about that. Firstly, there might be people who have fallen, but they might not necessarily be known by others. There might be people who have just become invincible, but there might not necessarily be anyone who knows about it. Also, not all invincible realm experts will build a mansion. Xia Huyo smiled and said, you should know that after reading the history, the reason why a mansion was built more than 300 years ago was because there was no other way. Some experts of the 10,000 races rushed into the human realm and created chaos everywhere. Some invincible realm experts had no other choice but to stand up and build a mansion to protect the peace of the area. Suyu nodded slightly. He knew about this history. Of course, the book was too vague. In fact, there were many doubts that were not explained clearly. For example, how did those invincible experts from 300 years ago advance? Where did they come from? Where did they learn from? Were there any experts before the human realm? In short, it was very vague. When it came to these invincible combat powers, the book was vague. Suyu did not pursue the matter further. He had roughly figured out some things. At this moment, he was also guessing that this fellow might really be Xia Longwu's son. What a pity. Xia Longwu was the person that Suyu worshipped the most in the past. When he appeared on television, he was extremely dignified. With a single order, his head would roll off. He was an existence that even the myriad clan sect did not dare to show themselves in the Great Xia Manor. Such an expert, such a dignified king, his son. This bird-like appearance. He did not quite believe it. Of course, Suyu would not expose him. He had roughly an 80% chance of finding out. As long as he knew, he would be fine. If he exposed him, he could be considered as the crown prince of the Great Xia Mansion. Could it be that he had to bow every time he saw him? Let's not talk about this anymore. The last time I was with you, I still had 4,000 merit points, right? I asked you to help me purchase some essence blood. Did you purchase it? I bought some. Mountain breaking ox blood essence. I got you 100 drops of 2,000 merit points for the later stage of 10,000 stones. I got you 500 drops of soul-devouring insect blood essence for the 1,000 June realm. I got you 1,500 merit points. I got you 10 drops of 5 elements blood essence for the remaining 500 merit points. It's from the Fire Spirit clan. He spent it all just like that. Suyu was also helpless. This guy's efficiency was really fast. His calculations were really accurate. He had spent it all in an instant. Not a single cent more, not a single cent less. The mountain ox at the front line didn't rebel. Xia Huyu couldn't help but laugh. What are you thinking about? It was just some blood essence, and he hadn't killed many. The mountain ox was only one of the top 100 races, so don't think too highly of them. Our human race is still one of the top 10 races. Every year, a large number of people die in battle. The mountain ox's life isn't worth as much as the human race's life. Of course, the mountain breaking ox is not a large number. Moreover, the starting point is 1,000 tons, which is slightly stronger than the human race. On the human side, they have to go through the Kaiyuan stage. Many powerful races do not have the Kaiyuan stage. Suyu did not say this again. However, he had used up all the merit points that he had received from the dividends last time. After thinking for a while, he said, "My teacher told me that when I am in the sky, I can open my divine aperture after cultivating the 10,000 literature sutra. However, absorbing willpower will make my divine aperture like my primordial aperture filled with some chaotic willpower. You are very knowledgeable. Do you know how to get rid of this chaotic willpower? You asked the right person. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 646. Chapter 646, Chapter 169 was a must. 3. Xia Huyo laughed and said, "There's not only one way to solve this disorder of willpower, but there are many ways. First, pills. There was a type of pill in the divine pill system that could eliminate this disorder of willpower. It was called the spirit concentration pill, and it was divided into different levels. The Tier 2 spirit concentration pill corresponded to the soaring stage, but the price was very high. 100 merit points per pill. The effect was not bad. One pill could purify 3 to 5 divine apertures. Second, divine talisman. On the side of the divine talisman system, there's a type of purifying divine talisman. It's a one-time use, and it can be used to purify the divine apertures. The price is about the same as the spirit concentration pill. Third, use willpower with extremely high purity to wash away impurities. Fourth, there are a few rare natural treasures that can solve this problem. Fifth, cultivation method. Cultivation technique. Su Yu was more concerned about this and asked, "Is there a cultivation technique that can solve this problem?" Yes. Xia Huyo thought for a moment and said, "Of course, I don't have such a cultivation technique, and I can't buy it. However, there are people who have it. It's rumored that the great Ming King has this cultivation technique that can purify willpower. The Zhu family of the great Ming mansion should have this cultivation technique passed down to them. Therefore, the divine apertures of their civilized masters are relatively pure." Forget it, great Ming King. Su Yu had nothing else to say. The cultivation techniques of the invincible clan obviously wouldn't be casually passed on to outsiders. Then do the 10,000 clans have this kind of cultivation technique? They should. I'm not sure about the specifics, but some clans that specialize in willpower might have it. I don't know if the 5 Elements clan has it. Su Yu didn't know either. He only knew the innate techniques and basic writings of the 5 Elements clan, but it didn't mean that he knew all of their cultivation techniques. Only the basic text formulas and innate techniques were activated by the blood essence, not including the extra cultivation techniques and martial techniques they cultivated. If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. Su Yu didn't ask any more questions. He would check it out himself or ask by phone. He wasn't in a hurry. Although the divine aperture had a lot of impurities and willpower, he didn't have any plans to advance now, so he didn't have to worry too much about the impurities affecting his future. He still had 5,000 merit points left, which was more than 5,000. He still had more than 300 points left. After thinking for a while, Su Yu said, "Huyu, if I want to advance to 10,000 stones, do you think there is anything that can help me advance better and faster?" "You are preparing to advance to 10,000 stones?" Xia Huyu was first surprised, but then he felt that it was only natural. Since Su Yu had already reached the critical mass, it was only natural for him to want to advance. To advance to 10,000 stones, you should also know that it means to fuse your acupoints. However, to fuse your acupoints, you must fuse at least 10 acupoints to be considered as 10,000 stones. The number of fused acupoints has a great impact on one's combat strength. It's best to fuse all the acupoints of the first level into one. For example, the 12 acupoints of the first level of the Art of War God. It's best to fuse all of them into one. This way, when you attack, the vital qi in your acupoints will gather and you'll be able to use it like a fish in water. There won't be any stagnation or unsmooth operation. Xia Huyo said a few words but didn't say much. Su Yu should understand this himself. Xia Huyo thought for a moment and said, the best supporting item that can help you advance to 10,000 stones, should be the glazed fruit. Glazed fruit? Su Yu thought for a moment. He had never heard of it. Compared to these disciples from large families, his knowledge was still lacking. As for book knowledge, it was impossible for Su Yu to be proficient in everything. That's right. After consuming a fruit that can make your body as clear as glass, your acupuncture points will undergo some qualitative changes, or perhaps solidify. At this time, when you fuse with your acupuncture points, the repulsive force will be at its lowest. The repulsive force will be at its lowest. Su Yu seemed to be deep in thought as he slowly said, if you fuse with your acupuncture points will repel each other. Then, using divine runes to replace the glass fruit to solidify or other methods to weaken the repulsive force, is that also possible? Yes. Xia Huyo nodded and said, it's naturally possible to have a suitable divine rune. The key is that you might not have such a divine rune. Understood. Su Yu did not say anything more. He looked at the sky. It was almost dawn. He said, I'll leave the things with you for now. You can send them to the entrance of the Wentan Research Center later. Recently, there are many people watching me. I don't want to be robbed on the way. Okay. Xia Huyo nodded. He was in a good mood. He had made another business deal. Moreover, Su Yu still had a lot of merit points on hand. He could do business again next. 10,000 stones. After Su Yu left, Xia Huyo grumbled. This guy was a civilized master. His physical body was cultivated like a warrior. He was not afraid of delaying his willpower cultivation. Su Yu slowly wandered around the morning academy. Xia Huyo was most likely Xia Longwu's son. Otherwise, how could he have learned the character nurturing formula? Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that this guy was a powerhouse above the sky. If that was the case, Su Yu would not be able to say anything. However, he was so young, yet he was already above the sky. Such a monster, it was very likely that he was Xia Longwu's son. As expected, he came from a big family, so his ability to disguise himself is quite good. Xia Huyo's willpower was definitely not just this. Su Yu was also unable to judge what his true strength was like. Perhaps he was even stronger than Wan Mingze. In fact, he might not even be able to suppress him. All of you, hide and hide, what are you doing? Su Yu cursed in his heart. There were a few others in the class as well. They were so mysterious that one could not figure out what their true strength was like. They did not even make it onto the leaderboards. They just hid like that. One did not even know why. However, when he thought about himself, forget it. He also hid a lot of things. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 647. Chapter 647, Chapter 169 was insisted on. 4. For example, he didn't tell anyone about the 20 god apertures he had opened. After wandering around the school for a while, Su Yu waited until the sky was completely bright before walking towards Zhao Li's research institute. What a rare guest. When he saw Su Yu, Zhao Li chuckled and teased him. Su Yu was a little embarrassed. He only came because he had something to do, and he usually didn't come over when he had nothing to do. This so-called minor course, in reality, he didn't even go to the basic courses anymore. Teacher, It's nothing. Zhao Li indeed didn't care too much about it. He smiled and said, you brat, if you can still come to the weapon forging class, then I'll have to admire you. One side needs to cultivate, one side needs to sketch out the divine language, and the other side needs to raise one's willpower. In a short period of time, you still need to fight over the top 100 rankings. It's only been 2 months since you entered the school. He really didn't care too much. Su Yu was very busy, and everyone could understand this. Especially since Su Yu had participated in some research projects. For him to cultivate to such an extent was already enough to shock a group of people. To be able to train in weapon forging at a time like this, then Su Yu was a god. Su Yu was extremely embarrassed. Zhao Li did not mind as he closed the door of the research institute's courtyard. As he walked, he said, "Speak. What is it? Is it reforging a weapon? There's no need to be in such a hurry. The divine runes you have outlined should not be many. It was only reforged last time. Come find me when you have more than 10 divine runes." Teacher. Su Yu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Teacher, I came to look for you to ask if there's any way to enter the Yuan Qi mystic realm without accumulating merit points. Aren't you done?" Zhao Li said in surprise, "You have accumulated enough merit points. I know that. Could it be that you want to enter for free?" Su Yu smiled foolishly. "If it's free, that would be great." "You." Zhao Li was speechless and couldn't help but laugh. He thought for a moment and said, "You probably know about the situation, right? Let me put it this way. My father, he was the 4th-generation prefect of the academy and left that divine text behind. Actually, I never bothered with it because he used the resources of the academy to be powerful. He represented the Great Xia Civilization Academy. Of course, strictly speaking, the mystic realm should belong to me. Otherwise, some invincible families would be looking for trouble with me now. If strong families don't enjoy the benefits brought by strong people, what's the point of becoming strong people?" Zhao Li did not care too much about what the others did. He continued, 100 merit points for one entry is actually not much. This is because there is a cost to maintaining the secret realm. The academy has some income, but it is actually not much. It is very little. Su Yu nodded. He said softly, "Teacher, it doesn't matter if it is not free. My idea is to send a few of my good friends to cultivate. The money can be paid, but they do not have enough merit points. You know, it is too difficult to accumulate merit points before they can fly." "It's not difficult for you, kid." Zhao Li laughed and said, "All right, I'll pay 100 merit points. This is to keep the arcane realm running for a long time. If the money is enough, I can open a back door to accumulate merit points." As he said that, he dug around on his broken sofa. After digging for a while, he took out a pitch-black sign. "With this, you can bring people in. The ones guarding the arcane realm are Xiao Huang and Xiao Nye. They know the situation." Xiao Huang. Xiao Nye. Su Yu sounded extremely awkward. Xiao Nye was alright, Xiao Huang. I remember, the name of the dog that the uncle next door raised was called this. "Thank you, teacher." Su Yu didn't think too much about it. He quickly took it with a face full of joy. This thing was good. He could bring people in. Although he still had to pay, at least he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. He was counting on Hu Zongqi, Lin Yao, and the others to accumulate merit points. They wouldn't be able to get into the top 10 of the monthly test, and they wouldn't be able to enter the top 100, he couldn't do missions, he had to wait for a long time. When he took the token, it felt a little cool, and there was nothing extra on it. It was a hammer with the word Zhao on it. Su Yu was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, "Teacher, I've troubled you. Oh right, the last time you gave me a few hammers, I found that my willpower was much stronger. When I tested it before, I found that my willpower had reached the peak of Tier 1. Peak of Tier 1. Zhao Li thought for a moment. He nodded and said, "That's right. But my hammers didn't have that big of an effect. This is related to yourself. Your willpower originally had the intention of being tempered 1,000 times. I just made it more condensed." "Teacher, is that the effect of the soul-expanding technique?" "Yes." Zhao Li was not surprised that Su Yu knew about this. At this time, if he still didn't know, Su Yu would be a fool. He smiled and said, "Now you regret it, right? Back then, if you were majoring in weapon forging, I would have taught you the soul-expanding art. Now, you can only passively enjoy the benefits of a few hammers. You have to know that after cultivating, your sea of will automatically form a big hammer, tempering your sea of will every day." Su Yu looked at him strangely. So, Teacher Zhao was being hammered every day? Zhao Li was speechless as he looked at him. He smiled and said, "What are you looking at? This is the true sea of will. Even the mountains and seas cannot break my sea of will. This is the benefit of the God-expanding spell. Willpower is divided into levels. Recuperation level 1, soaring level 2, Ling Yun level 3, mountains and seas level 4, sun moon level 5, currently, the highest is at the peak of level 5. Although I am Ling Yun, my willpower has long reached level 4. Su Yu asked in surprise, "Then why isn't Teacher Mountain and Sea?" 1. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 648. Chapter 648, Chapter 169 was insisted on. 5. Mountain and Sea. Zhao Li thought for a moment, then shook his head. He sighed. "You've been in school for so long, you should know something. Advancing requires willpower, divine runes, and divine apertures to reach that standard. Back then, I failed to forge an Earth-grade literary weapon, causing my main divine runes to fail to advance. My main divine runes are currently only at the peak of Tier 3, unable to reach Tier 4. Moreover, back then, in order to step into the mountain and sea in one fell swoop, I smelted my main divine runes into that literary weapon. Now that the literary weapon is crippled, my life is hopeless." In reality, there was still some hope, but it wasn't very hopeful. He didn't care too much about it. A few years ago, he had been a little disappointed, but now, it all depended on luck. Perhaps one day, that literary weapon would completely advance, and he would be able to successfully advance his main god text as well, entering the mountain and sea realm in one fell swoop. Only now did Su Yu understand why Zhao Li hadn't been able to enter the mountain and sea realm. What great courage! He had actually integrated the main divine script into the literary soldiers. No wonder he was already 120 years old, cough cough, no wonder he couldn't advance. "Teacher, then why aren't you at the 9th level of Lingyun?" Zhao Li said casually, "It was caused by the soul expansion technique. I was originally, but I wasn't able to advance successfully, so my sea of consciousness couldn't expand. My soul expansion technique was also tempered for me every day, compressing my willpower. After a few rounds, my sea of consciousness didn't fully accumulate until it fell to the 7th level of Lingyun." Su Yu finally understood. So this person was previously at the 9th level of Lingyun. In the end, he wasn't able to enter the mountain sea realm, and hammered his willpower every day. Under the compression, he fell to the 7th level of Lingyun. "Then, will you continue to drop?" "I won't." Zhao Li smiled and said, "There's always a limit. If I continue to compress, my willpower will solidify. I've already compressed to the 7th level of Lingyun to the limit." Su Yu was really curious now. "Then, if you compress it so much, once you enter the mountain and sea realm, won't you instantly become an expert in the mountain and sea realm?" "Not to the extent of." Zhao Li chuckled and said, "However, in terms of strength, when I reach the mountain and sea realm, an ordinary 3rd level of the mountain and sea realm might not be my match. As for the mid-level of the mountain and sea realm, that's another level." "Teacher, then what went wrong with your literary weapon? Why did it fail?" Su Yu saw that Zhao Li had a good conversation today, so he couldn't help but ask a few more questions. Zhao Li sank into his memories. After a long while, he said, "When I forged it back then, I didn't have much strength left. Logically speaking, an Earth-grade literary weapon needs to have 73 golden patterns to be considered an Earth-grade literary weapon. Actually, I could have forged it, but I was too ambitious and greedy. I thought that I could forge more golden patterns. Zhao Li shook his head, he sighed. But I was too arrogant. The materials I used were all the best materials. They were prepared for me to advance into a heaven-rank scribe in the future. It was even more difficult to carve the golden patterns. In addition, I had fused the main god language into it, causing it to have some resistance. The difficulty increased even more. When I forged 72 golden patterns, I couldn't hold on any longer. I wanted to forge 73 golden patterns, but I failed instead. The scribe didn't advance successfully. Instead, because the materials were too strong, it trapped my main god language inside. Zhao Li heaved a sigh of relief. Now, unless I shatter this literary weapon, once it breaks, my main divine text will also be heavily damaged. Moreover, I can't bear to part with it, so I'll just leave it like this. I'll nurture it one day at a time, and perhaps one day, when my luck is good, I'll take the initiative to advance. Su Yu scratched his head. Teacher, then can't I reforge the literary weapon? Of course. Zhao Li shot him a glance. However, I'm not as strong as I was back then. You saw how difficult it is to recast the golden pattern last time. Unless someone helps me recast it, there's a guy in the Great Xia Mansion who has the ability to do so. That Earth-grade weapon forging master. Zhao Li curled his lips. It's him. But I can't be bothered with him. That guy has been coveting my main god language and my god expanding technique. I'd rather not advance to the next level than look for him. Zhao Li shot him a glance. He said regretfully, You brat, your willpower is strong. If you can advance to Ling Yun and cultivate my god expanding technique, then you can help me reforge it. There's still hope. How about this? How about you destroy your extra god's prose and come back to me again? Su Yu laughed awkwardly. Teacher, what did you mean by destroying the technique? Su Yu scratched his head and said in a low voice, Teacher, why don't you teach me the god expanding spell? Once I've cultivated to Ling Yun, I'll come and help you. My cultivation is very fast. Very soon, I'll be Ling Yun. Zhao Li stared at him with his mouth agape. F***ck. This kid, what thick skin. Su Yu laughed dryly and said, Teacher, don't look at me like that. I'm serious. My cultivation is really very fast. Scram. Zhao Li said unhappily, You're not even my direct disciple. If I teach you, do I still have to take in a closed-door disciple? Su Yu chuckled and said, Teacher, I see that you're not ready to take in a disciple anytime soon. Why don't you make do with it first? The Multi-Divine Literature department has been banned. It's not official. I'm actually majoring in the weapon forging department. Have you forgotten? Zhao Li was stunned. Is that so? You can still say that? That's true. The Multi-Divine Literature department was gone. The cultivation department that Su Yu registered in the academy was actually the weapon forging department and not the Multi-Divine Literature department. Of course, Su Yu was listed in the Divine Literature Academy. Zhao Li scratched his white hair. Was that so? This kid could be considered to be from the weapon forging department and not the Multi-Divine Literature department. Why do I always feel that something is not right? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 649. Chapter 649, Chapter 170, The Powerful Soul Expanding Technique 1. Zhao Li really didn't expect Su Yu to be so shameless. He was too direct. He thought that Su Yu would beat around the bush and think of a way to get the inheritance from him. As for the trick, he had thought of it for Su Yu. He had to make a few more trips to his side to learn more about the weapon forging department. If he really couldn't do it, he would come here every day to clean up and do odd jobs. In any case, all he had to do was to get close to Suyu. But in the end, this bastard didn't do anything but insisted on coming. Zhao Li stared at him, and Suyu had an honest look on his face. Teacher, does what I said make sense? There's your grandpa, there's your ancestors' logic. Zhao Li's heart was tired. He made a final struggle. You're not suited for weapon forging. You'll break the legacy of my old Zhao family. Teacher, I think there's still hope for me to walk the path of weapon forging. Teacher, I can draw a lot of divine inscriptions. If I randomly draw a few divine inscriptions for the weapon forging department, I'll be able to forge weapons. There was nothing wrong with it. Old Zhao was still unwilling to accept it. He wanted to pass on his knowledge to Suyu, or else he would have been kicked out long ago. However, he was still unwilling to accept it and wasn't too happy about it. You might not even be able to learn it. If you can learn it, it's already difficult for you to advance. Furthermore, you have to temper your sea of consciousness every day. I don't think you can even soar into the sky, let alone talk about Ling Yun helping me forge weapons. Suyu smiled foolishly. Teacher, I can learn it. I'm very smart. As for compressing my willpower, that's not a big problem. As long as the speed of growth of willpower is faster than the rate of compressing, then it's fine. Suyu, you say it's simple, but this willpower can't soar into the sky. The growth is slow to begin with. It's not slow. Suyu hurriedly said, Teacher, look, I'm already 70% full. The last time I was hammered by you, I had already dropped to the point where I was just recuperating. My growth is too fast. I'm afraid that I'll advance to the sky before I can even outline the divine text. It's only been a few days, not even a month, and I've actually increased my full capacity by 20%. Teacher, the hammering you did last time wasn't strong enough. Zhao Li's expression changed slightly. Only then did he realize something. Right, last month, it was the 18th, right? Suyu came once that time. At that time, after Suyu's willpower had been tempered by him, he had slipped to the stage where he was just recuperating. Today, it had been exactly 20 days. 20 days, it had increased by 20%. Or had it increased after expanding his sea of willpower? Only then did Zhao Li realize the serious problem. He looked at Suyu, and his willpower suddenly spread out and probed towards Suyu. A powerful willpower covered Suyu. It attacked Suyu's willpower. Suyu's willpower began to counterattack on its own, to defend. Zhao Li had been maintaining the pressure. Gradually, the pressure became stronger and stronger. Suyu was sweating profusely. At this moment, some of the shadow areas that covered the divine aperture gradually disappeared. When the shadow barrier of the first divine aperture was dispelled, a weak suction force flashed and disappeared. Zhao Li instantly withdrew his willpower. Looking at Suyu, Zhao Li didn't say anything. Suyu didn't say anything either. After a long while, Zhao Li said in a deep voice, You joined the Xia family. As he said, he denied himself, it's useless to join them. Are you Xia Longwu's illegitimate child? Suyu didn't know what to say. Obviously, old Zhao had discovered some problems, such as the divine aperture being opened. He didn't investigate further, but Zhao Li knew that there weren't many books in the entire human race that could nurture the mind and open the divine aperture. The Xia family of the great Xia mansion should have one. Where did Suyu learn this from? Zhao Li looked at him for a while and asked, Do you have an invincible ancestor? Suyu shook his head. Do you know invincible? He continued to shake his head. You are from the myriad clans. No, the myriad clans do not have such a thing. Even if the deity and demon races have it, they would not be willing to give it to the human race. He denied his own question and exhaled. Your own opportunity. Suyu didn't say anything. I guess so. Zhao Li didn't ask about this anymore. After thinking for a moment, he said, if you want to learn the expanding spirit technique, I can teach you, but I won't admit that you're my student. You're not my direct disciple either. Teacher, why? Su Yu didn't understand. Didn't old Zhao really wish for him to become his student? Zhao Li slowly said, your multi-divine literature department and the single divine literature department have been fighting for so many years. I saw it clearly. 50 years ago, I wasn't a young man anymore. That fellow was still alive and was about the same age as me. Su Yu knew that he was talking about the fifth-generation prefect. I've known him for many years. My father even taught him. I'm familiar with his students. Lu Wenyan and Hong Tan aren't idiots, nor are they stupid. They're not weak either. The polytheistic faction has been forced to this point, yet they still haven't fought back. It's because they haven't fought back, not because they've failed. Zhao Li said calmly, Hong Tan is not a nerd. Back then, when Lu Wenyan was determined to take the path of inheriting the God literature, Hong Tan had a chance. Another sun and moon expert decided to pass his God literature to Hong Tan. Hong Tan rejected it. Zhao Li started to talk about the past. At that time, I was there too. For that broken Wenbing, he wanted to pass it to Hong Tan. Hong Tan said that he would not take this path. If Lu Wenyan left, if he failed, the Great Xia Civilization Academy would still need someone to watch over them. Therefore, after Lu Wenyan left, Hong Tan quickly entered the sky. He was very young, not even 70 years old this year. He entered Lingyun at 30, Shanghai at 45, and 7th layer of Shanghai at 60. He is now at the peak of 8th layer. Zhao Li exhaled and said, he is about the same age as Xiaolongwu. That generation is about the same age as Xiaolongwu. However, to outsiders, it is an illusion. Hong Tan is very old, even older than me. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 650. Chapter 650, Chapter 170, The Powerful Mind Expanding Technique 2. Su Yu was stunned. That's right. I also have this kind of illusion. Hong Tan was very old, but thinking about it carefully, he wasn't that old. Wasn't he not even 70 years old yet? Zhao Li said calmly, he can hold it in for 50 years, alone. He can hold it in for 50 years without retaliating and focus on his own research. Do you think he's a saint or a fool, or something else? Su Yu didn't say anything. Zhao Li said again, so, what are you waiting for and what are you afraid of? I'm old and I think a little too much. If you insist on joining the Divine Language Department, I can teach you the cultivation technique, but I won't admit that you're my direct disciple. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the weapon forging department will be gone in the future. Teacher, I don't want to learn anymore. Why won't you learn it? Zhao Li smiled and said, so what if I teach you the cultivation technique? You still have the cultivation technique imparted by Invincible. Don't tell me that you're going to make trouble for me just because you've taught me the cultivation technique. It's not that complicated. It's fine as long as it's not my direct disciple. I'll teach it to whoever I like. But remember, don't drag me down with you in the end. Su Yu didn't know what to say. Zhao Li exhaled again, it's fine. I'll teach you the spirit augmentation technique, now. I'm just reminding you. Don't think that you're the only one who can change everything. You're just a weakling who can't even fly. What are you thinking about? Hong Tan, Lu Wenyan, and the others had been holding back for decades. Xia Yinqi, Hu Ping, Zhao Mingyue, and the others hadn't died. How could they really be destroyed so easily? Even if they are really destroyed, they have to be glorified for the last time. One day, when all of these people are dead, the other faction will be finished. If not, it means that there is still a chance for them to endure. Su Yu nodded and fell into deep thought. That's right, I seem to have overestimated myself and underestimated those elders. Even Lu Laoshi is much stronger than me. Teacher, I understand. It's good that you understand. Zhao Li exhaled. Come, follow me in. As he spoke, he stood up and walked in. A few minutes later, Su Yu and Zhao Li arrived at a basement. Su Yu didn't expect that there would be a huge basement in the research institute, so he was a little surprised. He thought that Zhao Li didn't have it. The soul expanding technique is actually very simple. You saw it last time. It's just a hammer. A hammer. Su Yu secretly ridiculed. These words were so ambiguous. He always felt that it was an insult. Calm down. At this moment, a huge hammer suddenly appeared in front of Zhao Li, flickering with a dark light. This is the foundation of the soul expanding technique. In your sea of consciousness, forge a huge hammer to temper your willpower and expand your sea of consciousness. Ordinary hammers won't do. It's not like you can expand your sea of consciousness with just a civil weapon hammer. This thing has to resonate with your sea of consciousness so that it won't hurt your sea of consciousness and not destroy it with a hammer. After talking for a long time, he saw that Su Yu didn't really understand. Zhao Li had a regretful expression, forget it. Your IQ isn't enough. You're a little smart, but you don't have any great wisdom. Forget it, I'll cut out a small hammer for you from my large hammer. You can just use it directly. If you nurture it with your willpower, it will grow up sooner or later. Su Yu's mouth widened. Am I being looked down on? Zhao Laoshi thought that I don't understand and can't learn it, so he simply cut out a small hammer for me. The kind of simple operation that could be used just by taking it out. Was it that simple? Teacher, is this even possible? It's possible. Zhao Li didn't seem to mind it too much. As a weapon forging master, you are skilled in splitting these things. When the time comes, you just have to adjust the frequency and resonate with your sea of consciousness. Actually, it's very simple. After I split the small hammer, you can store it into your sea of consciousness and adjust the frequency as you feel comfortable. I will teach you how to adjust the frequency later, then, when you feel the most comfortable, that means that the frequency is the same. To put it simply, when you hammer it, your sea of consciousness will feel comfortable and painless. The rhythm will be the same, just like breathing. That's right. Su Yu hurriedly nodded. He understood. Teacher, can you cultivate the spirit augmentation technique so simply? Simply? Zhao Li said unhappily, what's so simple about it? You're the second generation, so it's simple because I gave you the seed. The first generation, which is me, nearly exploded my sea of consciousness a few times back then in order to create this. Su Yu scratched his head and said softly, Teacher, why didn't you teach my teacher? Back then, my grandmaster seemed to have come to look for you. By phone. Zhao Li thought for a moment. After a long while, he finally said, if he had this hammer, he would still be rolling around. This thing depends on the person. Also, it's comfortable to hammer at the beginning, but it will be very painful to compress later. Can you withstand it? He felt that Su Yu would be fine. He could do it last time, but he should be fine in the future. Su Yu quickly nodded. There was absolutely no problem. That's right, young man. How many people can withstand the pain of the compression last time? Young man, each and every one of them has not suffered too much. I have hammered a few students, and they fell with one hammer. You want me to teach them? Old Zhao was disdainful. Teach my A**s. If you can't even withstand a few hammers, how can I teach you? Don't ruin my things. The reason why he took a liking to Su Yu was also because when he first saw Su Yu, this kid had consecutively unleashed his willpower multiple times. In the end, he was still able to stand up as if nothing had happened, and he was even able to reply. This was more like it. Without saying anything more, the huge hammer seemed to be giving birth at this moment. Gradually, Suyu could already see the appearance of a small hammer, and it was giving birth from the huge hammer. 1. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 651. Chapter 651, Chapter 170, The Powerful Mind Expanding Technique 3. Zhao Li's face was also somewhat pale. The consumption of willpower was not small, he said in a deep voice. The mind-expanding technique can not only temper the sea of willpower, it can also temper divine runes and literary weapons. Strictly speaking, this thing is still very strong. It can even be used as an offensive martial technique. For example, last time, when I hammered down, you were in so much pain that you wished you were dead. Do you think that under that kind of situation, you still have the battle strength? Even if I can help you temper your willpower afterward, what's the use? I've already killed you when we were fighting. Suyu was stunned. Willpower martial technique. Right, wasn't this a type of willpower martial technique? Yes, it was a support type thing. However, when Suyu recalled the time when he was knocked unconscious by the hammering, if this thing was used well, it would be a powerful willpower martial technique. At this moment, Suyu vaguely felt that the expanding spirit technique might really be a very powerful cultivation technique. Teacher, what grade is it? I don't know. Zhao Li said casually, I created it myself. Who knows what grade it is? I don't even need to open my divine aperture, so it's not easy to differentiate it. It can be considered a completely supplementary skill. It's not easy to determine the grade of these cultivation techniques. It's just that after forging a lot of weapons, I had a sudden inspiration and spent quite a bit of time to create it. The original purpose was to make it more convenient to forge literary weapons. You have to know that the forging of literary weapons cannot be done with ordinary hammers. Right, it can even be used to forge weapons. Suyu was secretly shocked. The more he heard, the more he felt that this cultivation technique was still very powerful. Don't look at it as just a hammer. Teacher, then can this small hammer of mine give birth to even smaller hammers in the future? Old Zhao looked at him. What kind of words was this? What did he mean by giving birth? Alright then, he looked at the scene again. The large hammer was really giving birth to small hammers. Old Zhao was very speechless. He said, yes, but don't divide it. I don't allow you to pass it on. You're not allowed to pass it on unless I die. It's up to you. Zhao Li said sullenly, do you know why so many people in this era don't pass on their own cultivation techniques? Kid, the hearts of millions of people. You should hold back for yourself. One day, you might be betrayed by others and learn of your flaws and weaknesses. It doesn't mean that selflessness can really live long. If you really want to be selfless, why don't you pass on your unique skills? Don't think that I'm too selfish. Think about it, if your cultivation technique were to be spread out, it would be a fundamental cultivation technique. In the end, if the enemy were to find out about it, they would have thoroughly researched how to target you and how to kill you. What are you still playing at? Suyu nodded. It made sense. His thoughts were still a little too simple. This was not a society without enemies. There were many enemies. Just as he was speaking, a small hammer appeared. Zhao Li's face instantly turned pale. Teacher, you. It's fine, I just used up some willpower. Zhao Li panted, that's why if you're not strong enough, don't even think about living. Pui, don't even think about splitting the God-expanding hammer. You won't be able to hold on. When you reach Ling Yun, you have some confidence. Otherwise, don't even think about shattering your own hammer. That would be the end of you. Suyu nodded his head silently, feeling a little grateful. In the academy, he had met the hated experts of the single divine script department, but he had also met some true teachers. Zhao Li, the two old men who guarded the secret realm, and some other experts whom he might not know. These people had a very simple goal, which was to train their students and teach them. There were dark places and bright places in the Institute of Civilization. Perhaps, this was the real society. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and put it into the Sea of Will. Zhao Li berated. Su Yu didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly released his willpower, and the small hammer instantly disappeared into the air. In the blink of an eye, it entered the Sea of Will. Once it entered the Sea of Will, Su Yu felt something different. Boom! In the Sea of Will, the small hammer entered and rampaged around, directly crashing into the golden album. The album ignored it. The small hammer flew for a while, but when it realized that it couldn't fly over there, it suddenly turned its head and flew toward the small saber formed by the Divine Runes battle technique. Blood and thunder divine runes flew out one after another. As soon as they flew out, they clashed with the small hammer. Rumble. The small hammer hammered these divine runes relentlessly, causing the divine runes to continuously retreat. It felt as if the divine runes had become a little smaller. Pooh! Su Yu only felt a splitting headache. His head was about to explode. He spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. The divine runes were continuously shrinking under the hammering, continuously retreating. Especially the blood divine runes. It seemed as if they were really bleeding from the hammering. The font kept shrinking, and layers of messy things spread out from the outer layers. Soon, Su Yu noticed something strange. The divine runes seemed to be purer and more condensed. The small hammer was not enough. The few divine runes on the hammer surrendered. In the blink of an eye, they suddenly flew high up into the sky and smashed the void space. At this moment, something that shocked Su Yu happened. The small hammer was hammering the divine aperture. With a hammer strike, the willpower in the divine aperture seemed to overflow a little. At this moment, black smoke appeared above Su Yu's head. Ordinary people would not be able to see it, but Zhao Li did. It was a chaotic willpower. He could not help but grumble, indiscriminately sucking. Don't suck the willpower that is too chaotic. It's too dirty. You bastard, you've contaminated my secret chamber. The black smoke dissipated in the surroundings. At that moment, the small hammer was still hammering. Each of the apertures was hammered once. Gradually, the small hammer was somewhat powerless, and suddenly flew down, flying toward the skull of the annihilation beast in his mind, and the hammer hit the skull.